Hi everyone, I'm Adelina. I'm 25 and living with my dad in our family home. It's been 3 years since my mom passed away, and it's been tough. My dad and I were getting by with our routines and quiet dinners. Then Vanessa came along. At first, I was happy because dad seemed happier, but something about her felt wrong. Adelina, sweetie, she would say in a sugary voice, let me cook from now on. Your dad needs a woman's touch. I'd smile and say, sure, whatever makes dad happy. But then she started changing things in the house, moving furniture, replacing mom's favorite curtains, even suggesting new wall colors. This color is so dreary, she'd say. I remembered picking it with mom and felt upset. My best friend Zoe noticed too. She's trying to erase your mom, Zoe said one day. You need to stand your ground, Addie. I knew, but dad seemed happy, and I didn't want to cause trouble. Then I got an internship at the local art gallery, which was exciting. Congratulations, Dad said, hugging me. Your mom would be so proud. But I saw Vanessa's expression change when he mentioned mom. I hope this means you'll be out of the house more, she said, hinting that I should leave. I ignored her comment and focused on Dad's smile. That night, I overheard them talking. Don't you think it's time Adelina found her own place? Vanessa asked Dad. My heart sank. Was she trying to kick me out? She's still grieving, Dad replied. This is her home too, but Vanessa kept pushing for privacy. The next morning, Vanessa approached me in the hallway. Adelina, dear, she said sweetly, your father and I are getting serious, and we need our space. Don't you think it's time for you to move out? I was shocked. This is my home. I'm not going anywhere, I replied. Vanessa's expression turned cold. We'll see about that, she said as she walked away. I realized this was a battle, and I had no clue how to fight it. I walked into the kitchen, feeling uneasy. Dad and Vanessa were there, both smiling. Something felt wrong. Adelina, honey, we have news, Dad said happily. Vanessa and I are engaged. My world spun. Engaged? But they'd only been together a few months. Vanessa flashed her huge diamond ring and said, when you know, you know. I forced a smile, feeling sick inside. That night, I called Zoe in tears. She's taking over everything. Zoe, mom's things are disappearing, and the house is changing. I feel like a stranger in my own home. Stay strong, Addie, Zoe said. We'll figure this out. But things only got worse. Vanessa's son, Derek, moved in. He was awful. Hey sis, he'd say mockingly, still living off daddy's money? I'd clench my teeth. I have a job, Derek, unlike some people. One night, I overheard Vanessa and Dad arguing. Robert, darling, we should put the house in my name, for tax reasons, Vanessa said. I don't know, Van. It's been in my family for generations, Dad replied. Don't you trust me? She pushed. I couldn't believe it. She was trying to take our home. The next day, I confronted Dad. Are you seriously thinking about giving her the house? He looked uncomfortable. It's complicated, Addie. Vanessa understands these things. Dad, wake up. Can't you see what she's doing? But he just shook his head. You're overreacting. Vanessa loves us. I knew I needed proof, so I started digging, and I found it. Vanessa had a shady past, 3 ex-husbands, all rich, and all left broke after divorcing her. She was a pro at this. I showed Dad the evidence. Look, she's a con artist. But he wouldn't believe me. You're just jealous, Adelina. Vanessa makes me happy. Why can't you accept that? I stormed out, angry and heartbroken. How could he be so blind? That night, Vanessa cornered me. I know what you're up to, you little brat, Vanessa sneered, but it won't work. Your dad loves me now. You're just the sad little orphan girl who can't move on. I was furious. You think you've won? Just wait. I'll show everyone who you really are. She laughed. Good luck with that, sweetie. No one will believe you over me. Shaking with anger, I went to my room. Vanessa had Dad completely under her control. She was cutting me off, changing our home, erasing every memory of Mom. And now, she wanted our house. I had to find a way to reveal who she truly was without losing Dad in the process. But how? As I stared at old family photos, an idea started forming. Vanessa thought she had all the power, but she didn't know who she was up against. I was my mother's daughter, and Mom always taught me to stand up for what's right. I picked up my phone and called Zoe. Hey Zoe, I need your help. It's time to take down this witch. I didn't know the worst was yet to come, but I was ready for a fight. Vanessa had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I woke up to shouting. Dad and Vanessa had just returned from their honeymoon, and something was wrong. I crept downstairs to listen. She needs to go, Robert, This is our home now, Vanessa demanded. But Vanessa, she's my daughter, Dad replied. I'm your wife, you have to choose, her or me. My heart sank. I couldn't believe this was happening. I rushed into the room. What's going on? I asked. Vanessa's face twisted with a smirk. Ah, Adelina, just in time. Your father and I were talking about your living situation. What do you mean? I asked, looking at Dad. He couldn't meet my eyes. Addie, honey, he started, we think it might be time for you to find your own place. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You're kicking me out of my own home? It's not like that, Dad stammered. We just need some space. Space? I yelled. This is my home. Mom and I chose everything in this house together. You can't just erase her, or me. Vanessa stepped forward, her voice sugary sweet. Darling, you're an adult now. It's time to spread your wings. I turned to Dad, desperate. Please don't do this, I begged, but he just stood there, silent and weak. You have a week, Vanessa said coldly. Pack your things. I ran to my room and slammed the door, overwhelmed by disbelief. I called Zoe, crying, they're kicking me out. Zoe, my own dad is letting it happen. Don't worry, Zoe said, you can stay with me and Ethan, we'll figure this out. As I packed, I found an old box of Mom's things. Inside were some papers, financial records, and old emails. My eyes widened as I read them. This was it, the proof I needed. That night, I decided to confront Vanessa. I know what you did to your ex-husbands, I said, holding up the evidence, the fraud, the embezzlement, it's all here. For a moment, fear flashed in Vanessa's eyes, but then she laughed. Oh honey, do you really think anyone will believe you? I'm a respectable businesswoman, you're just a jealous little girl. We'll see about that, I replied. The next day, I moved into Zoe and Ethan's spare room. As we unpacked, I told them everything. We need to expose her, Ethan said. But how? Then I had an idea. I have a friend at the art gallery who knows a financial investigator. What if we tip them off anonymously? Zoe grinned. Now we're talking. Over the next few weeks, I focused on my internship. The gallery owner, impressed with my work, offered me a chance to have my own solo exhibition. When I told Zoe, she squealed. This is huge, Addie. But even though I was excited, it felt bittersweet. Dad had tried calling me, leaving voicemails like, Adelina, please call me, I miss you, but I deleted them. He had made his choice. Then, about a month after I moved out, the bombshell dropped. Vanessa was arrested for fraud and embezzlement. Her past had finally caught up with her. I watched the news in shock as they led her away in handcuffs. Dad looked devastated, standing in the background. That night, he called me, his voice shaky. Addie, I'm so sorry, you were right about everything. Can we talk? Part of me wanted to hang up, but I agreed to meet him for coffee. When I saw him, he looked worn out and much older. I've lost everything, he said. The house, my savings, Vanessa took it all. I felt a mix of sadness and anger. I tried to warn you. I know, he said, looking ashamed. I was a fool. Can you ever forgive me? I took a deep breath. I don't know, Dad. You chose her over me, over Mom's memory. That's not something I can just forget. He nodded, tears in his eyes. I understand. I just hope someday we can rebuild our relationship. As I left the cafe, I felt lighter, like a dark cloud was finally lifting. I had my exhibition coming up, great friends, and a future full of possibilities. Vanessa had tried to ruin me, but in the end, she only made me stronger. I was ready to face whatever came next on my own terms. On the night of my exhibition, the gallery was buzzing with excitement. Among the crowd, I spotted Dad. Adelina, this is incredible, he said, his eyes wide with pride. I'm so proud of you. We found a quiet corner to talk. He apologized again, explaining that he had been in therapy, trying to understand his mistakes. I had mixed emotions, but agreed to take small steps toward rebuilding our relationship. Suddenly, Zoe rushed over with great news. Addie, someone just bought all your paintings. A big real estate developer wants to commission more. I was stunned. This was beyond my wildest dreams. In the months that followed, my career skyrocketed. Commissions kept coming in, and soon I was house hunting for a studio. That's when we found our old family home, now on the market after foreclosure. I want to buy it, I said impulsively. With my new success, I purchased our old family home. Standing in the empty living room, memories came flooding back. Ethan asked, "What are you going to do with all this space?" I smiled. "How would you two like to be my roommates?" Their eyes lit up. and we began turning the house into a place filled with new love and laughter. One evening, as we sat on the porch enjoying the sunset, Dad stopped by. I invited him to join us, realizing that family isn't just about blood, but about those who stand by you. Vanessa had tried to tear us apart, but in the end, she only made us stronger. I had my chosen family now, Zoe, Ethan, and even Dad, who was slowly earning back my trust. As for Vanessa, she was in jail, her reputation destroyed, but I didn't think much about her anymore. She had no power over me. I had faced my struggles, stood up for myself, and come out stronger. The future felt bright, filled with possibilities and surrounded by real love. A few weeks later, I got shocking news. Vanessa had tried one last con while in jail, but it failed badly. It led to even more charges and exposed her whole fraud network. Her son, Derek, was caught up in it and was also facing legal trouble for helping her. As I sat on the porch processing everything, Dad joined me. "You okay, kiddo?" he asked gently. I nodded, feeling a surprising sense of relief. "Yeah, I am. It's really over now." He smiled. "You know, your mom would be so proud of how you handled everything. You're stronger than both of us." Tears filled my eyes, but they were tears of healing, not pain. As the sun set on another day, I looked around at my reclaimed home, now filled with the warmth of true family and friends. I hadn't just survived the storm, I had thrived on the other side. The journey was tough, but it brought me exactly where I needed to be, and for that, I was truly grateful. The story ends here, but I have a question for you. Was I right to cut ties with my father after he chose Vanessa over me? Or should I have given him a chance to make things right sooner? What would you have done in my situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences and opinions might help others going through similar family struggles. If this story spoke to you, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We share more stories about overcoming toxic relationships and personal growth. Your support helps us keep creating content that empowers others to stand up for themselves and rebuild their lives after betrayal. Remember, sometimes the family we choose is more important than the one we're born into. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to read your responses.
Greta slowly walked down the street, pushing a baby carriage in front of her. January of this year was very cold, and Greta regretted leaving her old mittens in her previous apartment in the heat of an argument. Her 1.5-year-old son, Ian, cried in the stroller. The little one was hungry, and his young mother didn't even have enough money for a jar of baby food. "Hang on, my dear, hang on," whispered Greta, trying to rock her son to sleep. "I'll definitely come up with something." Greta's eyes were filled with tears. Earlier that day, she and her baby were kicked out onto the street by the owner of the apartment Greta had rented for the past couple of months. Mrs. Gottesman suddenly raised the rental price, and when Greta asked why, she immediately began to scream and argue. "What do you think, honey? That I would keep you and your child for pennies? Prices for everything are rising, you know. There's inflation. It's not profitable for me to rent you out for free." Greta looked at the landlady with genuine bewilderment and offence. "But you promised that we could live here, with you, at the same price until spring. I've already given you an advance payment." Mrs. Gottesman just shrugged her shoulders. "Of course you did. That was fair. And, by the way, my apartment is good. It's only a 10-minute walk from the subway. I found tenants who offered me twice as much per month." "Oh, that's it," Greta thought to herself. "It's all because of simple greed." But out loud, she asked, "Okay, we'll leave, but please give us time to find another place, at least a week. Where do I go now with a baby in my arms?" Greta pleadingly looked at the landlady, but Mrs. Gottesman was inflexible. "That's not my problem, honey. Hurry up and collect your things. And, as they say, all the best. New tenants will move in tomorrow morning." At first, Greta was furious about such injustice, and then she realized that it was useless to persuade Mrs. Gottesman. Therefore, having gathered her things in a shabby bag and put Ian in the stroller, the young mother left the keys in the hallway and silently left the apartment. Her mood was terrible. Most of all, Greta was upset because today was her birthday. Greta turned 25, and she was left alone on the street with a little child in her arms. Trying to warm herself up somehow, the poor woman put her hands in the pockets of her worn-out, once fur-lined coat. There she found a few small bills and coins. Greta sighed heavily. She had 3 more days until she received her maternity allowance. She hoped she could find an inexpensive hostel nearby where she could stay with her son and survive these days. It was freezing outside. Passers-by looked at the crying young woman with a baby stroller in surprise, but preferred not to interfere. Greta desperately wanted to eat. The poor woman had already saved up yesterday to feed Ian, and now her legs were shaking from exhaustion, and her strength could leave the young mother at any moment. "Oh God, I hope I have enough money for bread," Greta thought to herself, exhausted from hunger and stress. "If I don't eat, I won't be able to go anywhere." Greta took out a fistful of change from her pocket. She was going to count the coins, but then her hands, numb from the cold, trembled and shook. The coins spilled out onto the road next to the curb. Unable to see anything around her, Greta took a step forward, intending to pick them up again. At that moment, the pedestrian light turned red. A huge SUV speeding down the icy road almost hit the unfortunate woman. With great difficulty, the driver managed to brake and avoid disaster. The car's bumper froze just a few centimeters from Greta's legs. The driver, a tall young man, jumped out of the car and, slamming the door loudly, shouted all the swear words he could think of. "What, are you crazy? Tired of living? Why are you running out into traffic on a red light?" Greta, for whom everything happened so fast that she didn't even have time to understand anything, just looked at the man in bewilderment. Then the woman shook, her eyes rolled back, and she collapsed in a faint right into a large snowdrift. "Oh my goodness," exclaimed the young man, rushing towards the woman. He lightly tapped her cheeks to bring her back to consciousness. Greta, affected by hunger, fatigue and stress, couldn't immediately come to her senses. Finally the woman woke up. "Why did you scare me like that?" said the driver, lifting the woman to her feet and brushing the snow off her. Suddenly, he noticed the baby carriage and realized that Greta had just been startled and hadn't had time to react. Meanwhile, a crowd had gathered around the driver's SUV and the woman with a baby. Greta, who by that time had finally regained her senses, thanked the man for his help and immediately knelt down to collect the dropped change. Seeing how important it was to her, the driver decided to help. "Don't tell me you risked your life for just these coins," he said. "You don't understand. These are my last money," Greta answered shortly. "I need to eat, otherwise I won't be able to find a place for my son and me to stay overnight." She looked up at her saviour. The driver became embarrassed and immediately said, "I didn't mean to offend you. Maybe you'll agree to have dinner with me at the nearby cafe. It's not far from here, and we'll feed your baby too." The driver wanted to make amends with Greta and soften his recent rude behaviour towards this young woman. Seeing doubt in Greta's eyes, Ronald added, "You have nothing to fear from me. I won't do anything bad to you. On the contrary, I'm ashamed that I didn't understand your situation right away. You'll catch your breath at the cafe, and we'll see where to go from there." Ronald tried to cheer up the stranger, realizing what state she was in. Although Greta was worried about inconveniencing the driver with her presence, she eventually agreed. Soon they were sitting in a cozy, charming cafe, and in front of Greta and her son there was a plate of fragrant chicken soup, as well as the most delicate mashed potatoes with baked salmon and grated cheese. By the expensive business suit and impeccable manners, it was clear that the SUV driver was a wealthy man. Nevertheless, Ronald was very polite and courteous in communication, and had the wonderful ability to immediately win over his interlocutor, literally from the first minutes of communication. Greta felt at ease in the presence of this young man, and as it turned out, she was right about his social status. Ronald was the son of a very wealthy and influential businessman. And you, Greta, how did such a wonderful girl end up alone? Does Ian not have a father? The businessman asked carefully. Greta frowned immediately. Ronald, you see, she sighed, you surely know that not all men are willing to take responsibility for their own children. Ian's father turned out to be one of those. I sympathize, the man said sincerely. Listen, maybe I can help you. You see, I urgently need a cleaner in my office right now. Of course, I understand that this is not a great job, but still, would you like to try? The businessman really felt sorry for the young mother, and that's why he offered her this position. The man understood that Greta and her child needed food and shelter first and foremost. Greta was hesitant to believe that an unfamiliar and wealthy businessman was willing to help her completely selflessly. If you agree, I'll give you an advance right now, so you can rent a place for a while and pay the nanny to look after your child while you're at work. Greta thought deeply. The man's offer was very attractive. Besides, Greta feared what lay ahead for her and her son. The chance that the businessman was offering her now was truly a gift from fate. A minute later, the woman agreed. Wonderful, Ronald said contentedly, taking a few bills out of his wallet and handing them to the woman. Greta felt herself blushing to the roots of her hair. She thanked Ronald shyly, took the money, and thought that not all was lost for her and her son yet. At the same time, in a representative business class car on the other side of the city, a conversation was taking place. Well, Irene, it's time for me to pay my debt, said Mario Cavazzoni, a well-known entrepreneur in the city. I hope you won't resist. Remember, if it weren't for me, you would have definitely ended up behind bars for your scams with foreigners. And that cell wouldn't have been golden. The beautiful, well-groomed girl sitting across from him casually tossed her long dark hair over her shoulder and said sarcastically, Am I refusing? Tell me what needs to be done, and we'll part ways peacefully. I don't want us to be seen together unnecessarily. Mr. Cavazzoni just smiled and critically looked at the girl from head to toe. Oh, Irene, I see your tongue is still as sharp as ever. All right, listen to me carefully. I want to get rid of Ronald Hale. Get rid of him forever, you understand? I'm sick and tired of him and his transformations. I've spent years getting a controlling stake in this company. I've collected my millions from the company, and now Thomas's son has come to power and is going to destroy the system I've been building for years. No way. Irene raised her eyebrow in surprise. Apparently her boss was really determined, since he spat out his anger like a toad with bile. Mr. Cavazzoni had been a long-term partner of Thomas Hale. They started working together in the early days of the development of the Hales business. But as often happens, irreconcilable differences arose between the partners, and their paths diverged. Nevertheless, Mr. Cavazzoni always enjoyed the respect of Thomas and his family, to the extent that he even allowed his former partner to acquire a large stake in the company. And now, after the death of Hale Sr., when all the power passed into the hands of his son Ronald, Mr. Cavazzoni quietly decided to get rid of the last obstacle and take over the entire company. That's why he needed the young swindler, Irene Campoli, whom he was instructing right now. I'll help you get into the company, and then you try to charm Ronald somehow. I think it won't be too difficult for you, with your track record. The businessman laughed nastily, making the girl feel uneasy. And what then? She asked. Then I'll tell you separately what you need to do. At these words, Mr. Cavazzoni's face suddenly darkened, and the con artist immediately understood that he was planning something terrible. And what's in it for me? Asked the girl, looking directly into the businessman's eyes. He nodded briefly and said, "You'll get your share, and it'll be quite generous, don't doubt it. The main thing is to do what I say and talk less. Got it?" Irene agreed, and the villains began to carry out their wicked plan. A couple of days later, Mr. Cavazzoni recommended that Ronald take Irene on as an intern. She's a great manager with a lot of experience working for a well-known company. She's a very valuable specialist. You'll see, she'll raise our indicators so much that you'll be thanking me for a whole year. Ronald, who always listened to the opinion of his father's former partner, agreed to take the intern on a probationary period. "Let's see what your protégé is capable of, Mr. Cavazzoni." By that time, Ronald had already taken full control of his father's company. At first, when he was just appointed director, the young man was constantly doubting himself. Could he handle such a great responsibility? Would he destroy everything his father had worked so hard to create over the years? His subordinates also didn't immediately accept the young leader, but thanks to his natural resourcefulness and creative potential, Ronald was able to literally breathe new life into his father's brainchild with a record short time of just 6 months. 2 months had passed since Mr. Cavazzoni planted his Trojan horse in the company of the young businessman. During this time, Greta sadly watched as Irene systematically courted her boss. It went without saying that the young employee knew how to skillfully manipulate men and get what she wanted from them, thanks to her aggressive beauty and predatory charm of a tigress. Irene easily captured Ronald's heart with her clawed paws. The man quickly fell for the swindler's hook. Despite his attractiveness, he was not spoiled by female attention, so he easily took the intern's interest at face value. Greta just shook her head. She knew perfectly well that behind Irene's supposed feelings for her boss was something else, completely mercenary. Ironically, they were classmates in the past, so the current cleaner had enough time to study this cunning beauty inside and out. Greta knew for sure that Irene never loved anyone in her life except herself. That's why the young mother didn't believe in her feelings for Ronald at all. However, she still felt a little envious toward Irene. Why? Why does all the best always come to her? The cleaner leaned on the mop with which she was washing the office floor at that moment and involuntarily plunged into memories. Many years ago, Greta moved to the city from the village with her mother. There was nothing to do there because the place where they lived was already considered practically extinct. There was no work or future for a woman and her high school daughter. By that time, Greta's father had already died. An accident while winter fishing deprived their family of the main breadwinner. They began to live much worse, so the girl's mother decided to try her luck in the city. They managed to rent a small house on the outskirts, and Greta got her room in it, which looked more like a pantry. Although the girl was very upset about their poverty, she did not show it. She tried to help her mother with everything, but she could not find a better option for herself than to work as a cleaner in a local shopping centre. Greta herself also helped her mother wash the floors. After school, she always ran home first to change clothes and then to the store, where she worked an extra shift with her mother. Trying to make her mother's work easier, Greta carried heavy buckets of water and, instead of her, wrung out a rough rag, which her mother attached to the mop. In addition to everything else, Greta began to have problems at school. Being new in the class, she, of course, could not help but attract the attention of other children. 16-year-old Greta stood out sharply against the teenagers from wealthy families. Her modest clothes brought on sale, a backpack that she had seen better days, and the simplest phone. All this made her classmates constantly whisper behind the girl's back. Especially annoying for Greta was one girl whose parents at that time were considered very wealthy. It was the same Irene who now worked with her at the same company. The arrogant girl constantly teased Greta, emphasizing her, as she put it, peasant origin. "Well, peasant, are you going to spoil the mood constantly with your dull face? Probably today again you will ask to be released early from physical education. Of course you have to help your mum. Who better than you will wash all the floors in the city?" It was unbearable for Greta to listen to such words back then. She really got very tired of helping her mother, but she still endured it and never showed her dissatisfaction. The girl knew that besides themselves, no one would help them with anything. Of course, because of poverty and a constant lack of money, Greta felt awkward because she could not dress as beautifully and stylishly as her peers. And in one thing, Irene was right. Her mother worked as a simple cleaner, not the most prestigious position to say the least. Despite difficult relations with classmates, Greta soon became one of the best students in school. Teachers were often surprised by the diligence and high intelligence of the girl, who was able to multiply large numbers in her mind without resorting to a calculator. Most prominently, these abilities manifested themselves as physics, algebra, and computer science classes. But alas, good grades and respect from teachers did not make her the class leader. Irene continued to tease her until graduation, so Greta was able to breathe freely only when she received her certificate and commendation for excellent academic performance and left the school walls forever. Teachers had predicted a brilliant future for Greta in the field of exact sciences, but she could only sigh sadly. Well, where could she go? To a university? No, she simply couldn't leave her mother alone, so higher education was out of the question. Over the next few years, Greta and her mother struggled to make ends meet in rental apartments, taking on odd jobs whenever they could. Greta worked as a cashier in a grocery store, as a salesperson at a market, and even as an order picker at an online store warehouse. But landlords invariably raised the rent, and they still needed to live and dress, so there was never enough money. They saved on everything, and Greta saw no way out of this situation until she met Alex. Alex was a handsome young man who worked as a loader in the same supermarket where Greta worked as a cashier. At the time, Greta was already 23 years old, and her heart was open to a great and deep feeling. Alex immediately appealed to Greta, largely because he seemed like a reliable, stable man. The girl hoped that something would work out between them, perhaps even that her lover would invite her to marry him, especially since he was from the same simple family as Greta. However, her mother did not really like her daughter's new suitor. "I don't know, darling. I'm not sure about him," the woman said. "He has some strange eyes. I don't see any love in them." "Mummy, what are you talking about?" Greta asked with a smile. "Alex is just tired. No wonder he spent almost 10 hours on his feet, and then he came straight to us. And not empty-handed. He brought flowers and a cake. Of course he's good." The girl's mother only shrugged her shoulders in doubt. "It's up to you to decide, Greta, but I wouldn't expect much from him if I were in your place. He's not your man, believe me." The daughter fell silent then, although she was hurt that her mother could not or did not want to share her happiness. However, Greta did not stop dating Alex. Her feelings for this blonde and cheerful guy were too strong. Several more months passed before Greta found out that she was pregnant. Of course, she hurried to tell the father of the child, but her lover, as it turned out, was not ready for this. "Greta, are you sure you're really expecting a baby?" the man asked hopefully. "I heard that women sometimes have false alarms." Greta looked at him in surprise and said confidently, "Alex, I visited the doctor, it's all true. The term is still small, but there can be no mistakes. This is your child, and I am infinitely happy that I will soon become a mother." Alex slowly looked away, then looked around, checking if anyone would hear them in the supermarket's utility room. Greta, well, it's like... What? A worried shadow flashed in the girl's eyes. You see, it's not the right time for this. Greta just waved her hands as if saying that's how it always is. The girl wanted to ask the guy what they should do next, but their conversation was interrupted. They urgently needed to go to the store. After that, for the rest of the day, Alex preferred to stay away from the girl, and if they did meet, he timidly averted his eyes from his beloved. Greta then thought for the first time about how she would live if, God forbid, she remained completely alone. After all, her mother was already old, and Greta could not hang the care of her future child on her. And there was little hope for Alex. The girl's fears were confirmed when the next day Alex abruptly quit and disappeared in an unknown direction. He even asked the accountant to send him the calculation by mail, saying that he was rushing to do important things in another city. Greta was not naive and immediately realized that her fiancé had run away from her, not wanting to take responsibility. Greta's heart was broken. Her mother had warned her that she would cry because of Alex, but the daughter did not believe it, and it turned out exactly like that. The pregnancy was difficult and Greta was constantly forced to be hospitalized. The young woman was distressed that her mother was left alone at such times without supervision. Once, when Greta was discharged after another preservation, she returned home and found her mother dead from a heart attack. The daughter's horror cannot be described in words. Her neighbours helped with the funeral. Greta gave them all the little money that she had saved at that time, but she was unable to make all the necessary preparations. It seemed to her that her life was over. Her nearest and dearest person had left her, and she was left alone in this harsh world. From that moment on, life became a series of trials for the young woman. She had to quickly move out of the apartment because the landlady did not want to tolerate what she called problematic tenants. The future mother had to find another place to live. Meanwhile, she was laid off from the supermarket where she worked while she was in the hospital. The store owner did not want to pay the pregnant employee her maternity leave, so he decided to cheat by accusing the poor woman of a non-existent shortage as a pretext. Greta wanted to complain, but to whom? No one would protect her from arbitrariness, and she just resigned herself to what had happened. After that, wherever Greta went, she was refused work. In the end, to get at least something, the woman had to lie, hiding her pregnancy. This allowed her to stay afloat for some time. She worked as a dishwasher and cleaner at a restaurant. However, when she could no longer hide her state, she resigned from her job. With the birth of her son, the situation changed, but not for the better. Greta began to receive a childcare allowance. However, it was so meagre that the unfortunate woman often went hungry herself just to feed little Ian. They had nowhere to live properly. The office cleaner position that the young mother received not long ago became a life-saving cycle for her and Ian, helping them survive the turbulent ocean of worldly troubles. Greta tried to do her job well and not attract attention from other employees. She understood perfectly her position in the team and therefore increasingly remained silent and didn't get close to anyone. If someone greeted her, she greeted them back, but that was all. However, fate still brought her face to face with Irene. The beauty was very surprised by their meeting, but didn't miss the opportunity to take a jab at Greta. "Oh, Greta, I didn't know you worked here too." The girl looked the cleaner up and down, then squinted and said in a dissatisfied tone, "I see you've chosen the right path in life. I respect people who know their place and don't meddle where they shouldn't. Stay on your own side of the fence." Irene smirked and walked past her former classmate, throwing a piece of paper into the bucket of water. Despite holding on as best she could, Greta felt incredible pain and hurt deep down inside. She did not understand what made her worse than Irene, except for the lack of money. But money doesn't make a person good, and she more than anyone else had already learned that. The only person in the company with whom Greta always talked friendly was the director, Ronald Hale. The young businessman understood very well how difficult the situation with the young cleaner was, and therefore tried to do everything possible to ease it. Ronald and Greta were about the same age, except that the man was a couple of years older. Although they didn't chat in the cafeteria for employees and were rarely caught alone, these two respected each other. For the first time since the birth of her son, Greta could breathe calmly. Only now did she feel relative stability and confidence in tomorrow. However, there was still something in her daily hustle that she initially even hid from herself. The fact was that Greta gradually felt increasingly in love with her boss. Every time she saw him, her cheeks were filled with a hot blush, as if she were turning into a young and naive girl, thirsty for a strong and deep feeling. Greta suffered, seeing how Irene so easily won Ronald's heart. But all that was left for the poor cleaner was to endure. Who is she to him? Just a girl mopping floors and collecting garbage on the floors? Greta bitterly realized that their social status gap would never allow them to be together. Meanwhile, the intern scammer was able to fully implement her plan. Ronald was so charmed by her that, according to the girl herself, he was willing to eat out of her hand. Ronald completely lost control over himself. He was ready to fulfill any desire of his green-eyed beauty manager. Greta, seeing all this, could only grip the mop handle even tighter. In her opinion, Irene was not even worthy of the director's little finger. One day, while cleaning the men's restroom, Greta overheard a strange conversation. The toilet was designed in such a way that the audibility between the men's and women's compartments was excellent. Hearing a familiar voice, Greta stopped and listened carefully. "Mario, you need to act faster," demanded Irene, whose voice Greta immediately recognized. "I'm already tired, honestly. I have to powder my nose and run to a date with this fool now. He's already hooked. I have the documents and general power of attorney, fake signatures, and I've already ordered the necessary people too. It's just a matter of a little work. Damage the brakes in his car, and voila! An accident on the road, and we'll finally get what we deserve. You, as the holder of the majority of the shares, will become the rightful owner of the company, and I'll receive my percentage and leave with a light heart abroad." From the phone receiver, which Irene put on loudspeaker as she applied her makeup, the low voice of businessman Mr. Cavazzoni was heard. "Well, Irene, congratulations, you're great. You so skillfully fooled the guy, and, most importantly, you have done your job excellently. You got the papers I needed. Without them, my whole plan would have been for nothing. All right, I'll talk to someone. Maybe some of my guys will do everything tonight. Ronald still parks his official car in the company's general garage, right?" "Yeah," the invisible interlocutor said. Greta was horrified to learn that these two were planning something terrible for Ronald. She clamped her mouth with her hand to avoid screaming and tried to call her boss to warn him. However, despite multiple calls, Ronald did not pick up. Apparently, this seductress had so turned the boss's head that he did not want to notice anything in front of him. Greta had nothing else to do but go home empty-handed. The rest of the evening the young mother spent on pins and needles, and at night she could not sleep at all. The next morning she ran straight to the security post. She had 2 hours left until her shift started. "Please, check Mr. Hale's car," she pleaded with the security guard. "I'm sure something's wrong with it. This is a matter of life and death." Moved by the cleaning lady's concern for their director's safety, the security guard decided to help Greta. After inspecting the boss's car, the guard was shocked to find that the brake hose in the car was indeed damaged, and that a small puddle of brake fluid had already formed under the car, which continued to leak from the hose. An hour later, when the director arrived at the office and learned of the incident, he was shocked. "Does that mean that somebody wanted to kill me? But who?" Greta told him about the conspiracy she had inadvertently overheard. It turned out that the businessman's old partner had planned the calculated and cold-blooded attack. Ronald became furious when he learned that Irene was involved. "Hold this scoundrel for a moment. Meanwhile, I'll call the police. I'm sure there's a lot she can tell them." The security services caught the fraudster and handed her over to the police. Irene immediately asked to cooperate with them. She gave up Mr. Cavazzoni and his assistants. The conspirators are now facing trial and a long prison term. "Thank you, Greta," the young businessman blushed and thanked the cleaning lady. "If it weren't for you, I would probably already be on the other side." Greta blushed, but waved her hand, saying that she simply could not leave such a terrible crime unnoticed. A couple of days later, she found a large vase of live flowers in her work area, white roses, orchids, and several stunningly beautiful asters. There was a small note attached to the bouquet with just a few words: "For the most attentive and honest person in the world." Greta was overwhelmed with emotion. She could not believe that Ronald had given her such a beautiful bouquet. "Allow me to drive you home today?" Ronald asked her with a smile. "I hope you liked the flowers." "So it was you," Greta gasped in amazement. "I'm sorry, but no one has ever given me such beauty before. Thank you." Greta felt her heart beating strongly, and every beat sent a pleasant warmth through her veins. Ronald, on the other hand, felt a strange excitement. It was as if his eyes had opened for the first time in his life. He saw both the gentle, unobtrusive beauty of Greta and the amazing light that shone from within her wonderful blue eyes. That evening, Ronald drove Greta home, and it marked the beginning of a beautiful, tender, and gentle romance that quickly grew into a truly deep and strong relationship between them. Now the couple is pleased and getting ready for their upcoming wedding, after which Ronald plans to immediately adopt Ian and give him his name. The businessman is convinced that his adopted son will become an excellent heir and continue his work, and then, God willing, his adopted son will have a little brother or sister.
Glasses of various kinds, including shot glasses, flew up and knocked against each other, spilling their contents onto the fingers of the young people. Timothy Weston accepted congratulations with a wide smile. Today they poured it on him like rain. Compliments, kind words, wishes that his wallet would never run out of money, and in bed there were always hot girls. "Timothy, bro, happy birthday to you. You are the best man," said his tipsy and red-cheeked friend Ben. The guy decided to hug the birthday boy. Because of all the drinks, his legs refused to hold him, and he rather hung onto Timothy's shoulder like a dead weight. "Thanks." Timothy patted his friend on the back and sat down next to him on the couch. Timothy sipped from his glass and looked around at his friends with a satisfied expression. Timothy's 20th birthday party was in full swing. The music in the nightclub was thundering, the spotlights hitting the eyes. Everywhere you looked there was fun, glitter, smoke and splashes of expensive champagne. Go-go dancers with beautiful bodies wriggled in special open cages. They looked like exotic birds, but instead of plumage, they wore short shorts made of leather. The bartenders behind the bars were not just stirring cocktails and pouring hot drinks. They were demonstrating their skills in a continuous show. Bottles and glitter shakers were flying up now and then. This club was considered the most glamorous and luxurious in the city. It was the heart of the city's nightlife. To get inside, it was not enough to splurge on a table and be able to order something from the fabulously expensive menu. You still have to overcome 2 cordons of scowling guards, face control, dress code, and all that. Of course, for Timothy and his friends, this was not a problem. Rhonda, for example, who was sitting opposite, was the daughter of a local deputy and a charming, cute blonde with naive eyes like a child. She was on all the propaganda posters for her father. Not letting her into the club today would be like signing a death warrant for his business tomorrow. Then there was Gray. His parents were powerful entrepreneurs in the construction industry who probably built half the city and didn't disdain any methods to become local monopolists of their business. They even funded a couple of children's sports centres to look clean according to society. Gabe and Eunice were brother and sister. Their parents were too wealthy, and they had both been spoiled since childhood. Their father was the chairman of the board of directors of a banking group and just adored his offspring. All of them, sitting at the table, were chanting the name of the birthday boy and cheering carefree, while their bank accounts were full of the money thanks to the labour of their parents. As for Timothy, his father was the founder and CEO of the leading mining and metallurgical company in the country. Timothy attended a closed private school where he met Gabe and Eunice. He played soccer, badminton and horseback riding, and also tried his hand at diving and fencing. After graduation, he enrolled in the desired university. It should be given credit to Timothy, he studied diligently, digging through books with the enthusiasm of a scientist. Since childhood, his parents had provided him with everything he could wish for: the best toys, expensive gadgets, and clothes from well-known brands. On his coming of age, Timothy was given the keys to a luxury car, and on his 20th birthday, they bought their own apartment. It was a dream come true. But Timothy's life still had a significant difference from the carefree existence of his friends. Yes, now he was one of them. Young, rich, promising. He studied at the best university, constantly travelled abroad, had loving parents. He could throw a party whenever he wanted, but it wasn't always like that. He was not born into a wealthy family, but drew a lucky ticket to this life. He was like an ugly duckling who managed to become a beautiful white swan in his new family. He never told his friends about it. They wouldn't understand. Or worse, they would start putting themselves above him because of his background. Only his best friends, Gabe and Eunice, knew his secret and, most importantly, did not tell anyone. Who knows why Timothy confided in them? Maybe because they were brother and sister who always supported each other, protected and defended. And once upon a time, Timothy had a sister too. "And let's play Spin the Bottle," Rachel's voice interrupted the guy's thoughts. The girl was a dark-eyed, gorgeous brunette who took after her Arab father. She picked up one of the empty champagne bottles from the table and twirled it in her hands, looking at her friends defiantly. "And then maybe hide and seek?" Gabe snorted. "Rachel, sunshine, we're not 10 years old anymore. If you want someone to kiss you, just ask. My lips are at your service." The guy winked at his friend under the laughter of other friends. "Come on, let's play." Rachel pouted her lips, added demandingly, "I want to play something funny." "There's an idea. Let's play Truth or Dare," Rhonda suggested. "Just do it, don't slack off, and choose interesting tasks." This time, the number of those who wanted to play a fun game outweighed those who just wanted to relax. The rules of the game were simple. The player on whom the turn fell was given a choice: to truthfully answer the question he would be asked, or to perform some task. Earlier, friends could limit themselves to simple tasks like portraying an animal, dancing the dance, or singing a song loudly. But now the daring youth craved something spectacular and preferably humiliating. As a result, the questions that came out of the players were tricky, vulgar, and frank. And the tasks were even worse. Timothy, for example, already had to drink a disgusting cocktail. His friends mixed all kinds of drinks that were on the table in a glass. The wild mixture was incredibly heady. Rhonda managed to do a private lap dance for the impossibly happy Harry. And Ben would be forced to fulfill Torquil's whims as a servant until the end of the party and address him with the words, my master. And so the lot of the game fell to Gabe. "Action!" fearlessly blurted out the guy. Timothy, who had a chance to mock his best friend, thought hard. He looked around the place, hoping to find a worthy assignment for him. Then his lips stretched into the satisfied, fed-up smile of a cat that had eaten a canary. Here it was, the task literally floating into their hands. To be more exact, the task was manoeuvring through the bodies of the guests, firmly grasping with skinny fingers the tray loaded with a new portion of drinks and snacks. The waitress who served their table turned out to be a beautiful girl. Of course, they don't hire ugly girls in such places. But this girl, whose name tag read Anna, was so pretty. She was petite with thin black hair, gathered in a high ponytail, and huge dark eyes. True, the colour in the lighting of the club could not be made out, but who cares? Timothy noticed at once how Gabe froze whenever this pretty girl approached their table. It was clear to him that his best friend had a crush on the pretty waitress, so he decided to help push him towards his goal. "Gabe, your turn is to charm our waitress," Timothy said before the girl could reach the table. "I want you to come back here with her phone number or her underwear." All the friends greeted the idea with approving oohs and laughter. Gabe hummed, but he didn't have a chance to respond to the challenge because the waitress came up to their table, immediately putting misted glasses in the centre. The young people stopped talking and laughed, looking at her. Sensing their attention, the girl looked around the guests in embarrassment. "Your drinks," she said, as if it wasn't clear. "Thank you," Torquil mumbled, glancing shyly at Gabe. "Would you like anything else?" the waitress asked, placing the last shot on the table. She straightened up, holding the tray firmly in her lowered hands. Then, with a quick movement, fixed a loose strand of pitch-black hair behind her ear. "Yes," Gabe stretched out the word, looking at the girl like a cat at sour cream. "I would like to know your phone number. Could you please give it to me?" The girls giggled, looking at the scene playing out before them. The guys grinned. Timothy leaned back on the couch, getting comfortable, as if in the front row of a movie theatre. "Sorry, there's no such thing on the menu." The girl smiled patiently, clearly used to this kind of communication with customers. "Is there a special menu for VIP guests?" "I'm ready to splurge big if you provide one," Gabe said, smiling charmingly. "Alas," the girl shrugged her shoulders and took a short step back. "If you don't need anything else, I'll come over later." Gabe jumped to his feet and ended up next to her. The guy unceremoniously grabbed the girl's arm, not letting her step back. She turned around in astonishment, staring at him. "Let go?" the girl demanded in an even tone. Gabe obeyed with a grin, throwing his hands up and showing the girl his palms. "Don't be offended. I'm being sincere," Gabe began with a tempting tone. "I really like you. I'm thinking of inviting yourself to have some fun with us. We're not bad guys. We'll drive out of town and have a pool party. Let's go. You're going to love it." "I'm allergic to chlorine," the girl reported, pressing her lips together in impatience. Her gaze slid around as if looking for support, but no one cared about the waitress. "No problem. We have a jacuzzi," Gabe insisted. "Thanks for the offer, but I'm working," Anna said firmly. "That's okay. I'm willing to buy your time," the guy smiled. "How much is your shift worth? Let someone else fill in, and I'll take you away for the rest of the night." "You must be confusing a nightclub with a man club," the waitress suddenly hissed, narrowing her eyes. "That's not the way it's done here. I could call security." "Come on, stop flirting and playing hard to get," Gabe urged, getting angry with every minute. He was generally not a bad guy, but this evening he had had too much to drink and did not want to listen to the waitress's refusal in front of his friends. Suddenly, he leaned over to her and whispered something into her ear. What he said was not audible to the audience. However, his hand at some point
rested on the girl's thigh, which was encased in a short uniform skirt. He barely had time to stroke it before events took an abrupt turn. The girl flared up so much that her indignation was visible even in the darkness of the club. She sharply pushed Gabe away from herself. The tray fell out of her hands, falling to the floor with a clatter. Gabe even had no time to realize that the waitress's palm had smashed into his cheek. The force of the blow was such that it would surely leave a memorable mark on his cheek with the imprint of her fingers. "Are you crazy?" exclaimed Gabe, looking at the girl dumbfounded. "But what did you think? That if you can afford a bottle of expensive champagne, I will bow down before you?" The girl blustered. "I have some bad news for you. Not everything in the world can be bought." The girl no longer looked like a charming doll. A fearsome fury stood before them, her eyes scattering lightning bolts. "What's gotten into you, little girl?" Ben, who was only amused by what was going on, interjected. "Don't you know that you should treat us properly? We're all good guys here. Don't insult us if you value this place. Otherwise you won't be the one calling security, but we will." "I'm not insulting you." The girl proudly straightened her back, raising her nose and holding it to her chest like a shield. "I'm stating the facts. All people have personal boundaries, regardless of who they work for. If you can't keep your distance, hire a manners tutor. You can afford it, and buy some politeness in change." "Who do you think you are?" snorted Timothy, getting up from his seat and approaching the brazen waitress. "You think that if your face is pretty, you can wave your arms and open your mouth?" He decided to stand up for Gabe, cutting off the sassy girl. His head was buzzing with the alcoholic mixture he had drunk, and anger was boiling in his chest. "No, seriously, how dare an ordinary waitress talk to them like that? Didn't they teach you a simple rule when they hired you?" he continued, hovering over the girl, whose fingers turned white as she gripped the black tray. "The customer is always right. Plain and simple, isn't it? It's easy to remember, even to you. And if the customer is like us, you have to smile and indulge his whims. Do you know how much money we leave this place every weekend? We throw your annual salary in here and hope the service is up to par. And what are you doing? You're biting the hand that feeds you. So now, come and apologize profusely to my best friend. If you're lucky, we won't destroy your life." "No," the girl muttered emphatically, but her lips treacherously trembled. "It's up to him to apologize for the indecent offer." "Don't you realize what's going on?" Timothy was furious, looking at the brazen waitress with an alcoholic gaze. "It's my birthday, darling. As a good party host, I want my friends to be happy, and you're trying to ruin it. Let me explain it again. The difference between our social statuses is a gulf, and the sooner you realize it and become docile, the sooner you learn to accept the handouts that fate gives you. Then life will become easier and better. So go and apologize before I insist you do it on your knees. Then I'll forget the whole thing and even leave you a decent tip to spend on a new blouse or lipstick. Did you get it? Let's go." He forcefully grabbed the waitress by the wrist, yanking her toward Gabe. But the girl didn't put up with what was happening. Anna, whose eyes were already filling with tears, grabbed the first drink that came to hand from the table. In the next second, she threw its contents into Timothy's face. "What a wild wretch you are," growled Timothy, wiping the sticky drink from his face with disgust and anger. "You're gonna regret this, you fool." The next events unfolded rapidly. The rich friends demanded, in an ultimatum, for the dismissal of the damsel, who didn't know how to communicate with customers. "She's new here," the nightclub administrator tried to mumble an apology. "She has only been working for a couple of weeks." "You mean she had been working? Because as of this second, she can get the hell out of here. Otherwise, you're gonna have a huge hole in your budget and big trouble. Timothy, you know me. If I see her face here next weekend, your place will be razed to the ground." The manager also joined the conflict. In the end, the young people's wish was granted. They were given apologies, but it was not a proud waitress, but the manager of the nightclub. It was not known how real Timothy's threats were, but no one wanted to check, and it was much easier to dismiss the new waitress than to make trouble for themselves every week. So, the next morning, the poor waitress came to the office of the manager, which was located in the club. "It's your own fault, Anna." The man looked glumly at the waitress, handing over the money for the shifts worked, and letting the employee go wherever she wanted. "Didn't you know where you were going to work? Yes, some customers look at club, bar or restaurant workers as sexual objects. So what? You could have put up with it, smiled a couple of times and forgotten. You'd get a tip the size of a month's wages. And you? You're a fool." "I don't want their money," the girl scowled, taking her money. "And my name is Anna Maria. How many times can I say it? Anna Maria, not Anna." She placed a shiny silver-white badge on the manager's desk with her name on it, which was annoying to her eyes. When Anna Maria was given a uniform, they shrugged their shoulders, saying that her name was rare and they wouldn't order a new badge for her. However, it's a good thing that they didn't. Her time with the club was short-lived. Leaving the building, the girl took a deep breath and turned around. Where was she going to go now? It would seem that all roads were open before the young, beautiful Anna Maria, but alas, reality was far from fairy tales. For graduates of the orphanage, many paths were closed. Anna Maria, sighing heavily, wandered towards the bus stop. She should go to the supermarket and buy some groceries. The refrigerator was empty. Then she needed to prepare for the seminar on Monday and, of course, look for a new job for the weekend. Anna Maria turned 19 a month ago. The girl had just graduated from the orphanage, where she had lived since she was 5 years old. When she left the gates of the orphanage, she had no fear. On the contrary, a warm and joyful anticipation of change settled in her chest. She felt like a bird released from a cage. Unfortunately, no one told her that freedom is full of dangers. There, she had to build a nest, look for food, and fight for life, fearing to encounter birds or prey with large claws. Anna Maria got into the orphanage with her older brother. Their mother grew up in the orphanage herself, and she had no relatives. The father abandoned her when she was pregnant with their second child and disappeared without a trace. The single mother had no job, only social payments for the children. There were no means for a normal life, and even less for the maintenance of small children. And frankly, the mother had no desire to raise them. More importantly, this woman enjoyed drinking in the company of her buddies. The children were growing up in a world filled with the smell of booze and tobacco, the inarticulate shouts of drunken adults and swearing. Under these conditions, brother and sister became the closest people to each other in the whole world, protecting and preserving their fragile world from the harmful influence of adults. Left to themselves, they learned to survive. Even though Anna Maria's brother was a year older, he felt responsible for his sister as a man. Once, he stood up for Anna Maria when her mother's drinking buddy, a typical representative of marginalized society, tried to hit the girl. Anna Maria couldn't remember what caused the aggression of the strange man. Only the slap, which was intended for the little girl, whipped into the face of the older brother. The little, furious boy pounced on the offender. Of course, it didn't get him anywhere. How old was the brother then? 5 years old? But Anna Maria could remember for the rest of her life how he stood up for her. Her brother used to build huts for them under the table, throwing thick blankets on top. There they hid from the terrible, unjust world. He made up stories and told them to Anna Maria. And once he even composed a special poem to comfort his sister, who was crying from another offence. A short set of rhyming lines that Anna Maria had memorized. She hid it deep in her heart and repeated it like a prayer in especially difficult moments. Even as an adult, it seemed to her that it was a child's prayer protecting her. It is not known what would have happened to the children or how their fate would have turned out if the brother and sister had remained living in that apartment. But one day, strict people from the guardianship service came to their house. Maybe the neighbours complained, or maybe someone else gave the homeless alms. But both children were taken away from their mother, depriving her of her parental rights. At first, the brother and sister were together, but then their world once again shook, collapsing into dust. To increase their chances of being adopted, the guardianship decided to separate them. To the horror of the frightened children, one cloudy day they were sent to different orphanages, and all contact between them was lost. Anna Maria did not know what had happened to her brother, but she hoped that his fate was better than hers. She was taken in by a foster family, only to experience betrayal once again. She was eventually returned to the orphanage, where the walls and surroundings disgusted her. From a young age, the children were taught to work independently and live according to a strict schedule, much like in a prison. They were responsible for cleaning not only their rooms but the entire building, washing floors and windows, doing laundry, removing snow from the yard in winter, and falling leaves in autumn. However, the real problem was the methods of education and punishment, which were both exotic and diverse. It was possible to get a portion of the punishment for any mistake. For example, those who did not sleep during quiet hours were beaten with a wet towel. During the summer, they could be whipped with nettles and locked up in a gloomy shed on the orphanage's grounds. Especially unruly children who refused to obey the teachers were put in a distant wing for a month, where they were deprived of any contact with the outside world. Besides, the children in the orphanage were diverse, with hazing and power struggles between different groups being common. Therefore, when Anna Maria left the orphanage, she did not shed a single tear. Fortunately, the orphanage provided educational assistance to its pupils and sent many of them to different educational institutions. Anna Maria chose to study at the veterinary school because she had a love for animals that surpassed her love for people. It's difficult to believe, but Anna Maria had a sympathetic and open character. She just did not allow others to bully her, as she had a strong will that was forged in the harsh conditions of the orphanage. That was why she refused to tolerate the bullying of wealthy guys who had influential connections. After a bad conversation with the manager at the nightclub, she bought groceries and arrived at her grey apartment building. It was in a state of disrepair, but the government stubbornly turned a blind eye to it. It was so cold in the winter that one had to sleep in a down jacket. Since graduation, Anna Maria had been waiting in line for housing, just like any other orphan. However, no one seemed to be rushing to give her a roof over her head. When they finally did, the apartment was located in an old house that was barely holding up. Anna Maria said with objective reasons why the apartment was unsuitable. The house was in deplorable condition. The apartment was located under the roof, and dark mould had already gathered in the corners, creating a musty smell inside. The roof was obviously leaking, and during the rain everything poured directly into the apartment, causing the old floral wallpaper to peel away from the walls. "You don't look a gift horse in the mouth," said a formidable woman from the housing distribution service, and her bushy eyebrows met over the bridge of her nose when she looked at the orphan. "Sign the paper and be glad to have a roof over your head. Some people live on the streets." Biting her lip with resentment and realizing that she had been deceived, Anna Maria signed the necessary documents. She simply couldn't give up the damaged apartment. A new apartment would have to wait until old age. The girl, who had just graduated from the orphanage, did not fully understand how life was organized outside. She did not understand that it was necessary to fight injustice and go to court, for example. After all, many years ago, she was locked in a barn in the winter. What was a leaky roof to her? Nothing. After eating dinner and reading lectures, Anna Maria sat down in a chair and looked through job vacancies. Of course, Anna Maria, having entered the veterinary school, dreamed of immediately working in some veterinary clinic, even as a janitor or running small errands. However, the girl constantly faced rejection. She often encountered slanted views and stereotypes. Usually, employers who learned about her past immediately refused to hire her, promising to call back with an artificial smile. But Anna Maria's phone remained silent. The same situation occurred in a clothing store. Was it such a big problem for a lively and quick girl to hang a dress on hangers and take it places? But the manager cancelled Anna Maria's candidacy without explanation. It was also the same in the beauty salon, where the job required answering the phone and smiling from the reception desk. It was also the same in the children's playroom. Anna Maria could see in her employers' eyes what they were thinking as they turned her down. Everyone thought that orphans had a crippled psyche, that they were conflict-prone, stole, cheated and bought nothing but problems and no profit. It was as if the girl had not been brought up in an orphanage, but had done time in a maximum security prison. Getting into the elite club was a stroke of luck. The pay was great and the tips the guests left were even better. The only reason she was hired was that she arrived on time. That night the club was packed with guests. Some popular DJ had arrived. Having looked at the beautiful girl with a picky eye, she was not asked for details of her biography. Anna Maria was given a uniform and told to help other waiters. 10 sweats descended from the girl that night, but she was assigned a place and even paid cash immediately. It was a real victory, and now everything was ruined. Of course, Anna Maria regretted that she had missed such a chance. She should have apologized to those assholes, because now she would have to eat potatoes all day because she would run out of money soon. The phone in Anna Maria's hands suddenly came to life, startling the girl. She looked at the screen. The name of her classmate and only friend, Molly, popped up. "Hi, Molly," she said to her friend. "Hello, dear," chirped Molly on the other end. "Are you busy today?" "I'm free, and I'll be free for a long time yet." Anna Maria sighed sadly. "I'm unemployed again." The girl shared her bad news with her friend in a nutshell. Molly replied thoughtfully. "But I guess now you can say that you have experience working at one of the most prestigious places in the city, right?" "What are you getting at?" Anna Maria asked, picking at a hole in the old chair with her finger. "My acquaintance works as an administrator in a restaurant," Molly informed her. "He offered me a position as a weekend waitress, but I turned it down. Maybe we should offer your candidacy. The shifts are short, you only have to work Saturday and Sunday. They're busy days, so more staff is needed. It's a nice place, where all the bigwigs of the city gather." "Oh, my favourite audience." Anna Maria stretched sarcastically, but then thought that she should give it a try. The friends didn't put the matter on hold for long. The same day, Molly introduced Anna Maria to the administrator, Hank. She advertised Anna Maria's experience, the way an experienced salesman tries to sell someone a vacuum cleaner. She worked in the best nightclub in the city, she convinced the doubtful acquaintance. However, Molly remained silent about the fact that Anna Maria only worked there for less than a month. "She can handle your customers." In the end, poor Hank was worn down under Molly's pressure, and Anna Maria was told to come the following Saturday, but as an intern for now. "Our internships are paid," Hank hastened to please the girl, "and we provide meals." After 2 weeks, diligent and hard-working Anna Maria was made a full-fledged waiter. She liked the work, the team was great, and everyone helped each other. She could easily combine her 2 working days with her studies, and the tips here were just as good as in the nightclub. Anna Maria had already decided that her stars had finally aligned. But fate had other plans for her. Timothy held back a yawn, hiding it behind a polite smile. Professionally, he had learned to feign interest in his interlocutors, especially his father's colleagues and partners, on whom a successful deal depended. And right now, they were having a friendly dinner in the company of unusually nerdy investors. Timothy was a good son, but he decided not to follow in his father's footsteps and chose the profession of a surgeon. Suddenly, his phone rang. The ringtone sounded like angelic singing to the guy, so it saved him from the protracted conversation, at least for a while. "Oh, sorry," he apologized, getting up from his seat and making a disappointed face. "Important call." He stepped away from the table where his father and his partner, with his son, were sitting and took the call. "Hello." The man stretched out his greeting, smiling widely. "Hello, Timothy, how's it going?" Gabe answered him. "Not very funny," Timothy responded. "Dad made me come to a dinner with his partner, so you just gave me a break from the economics lecture." "You'll owe me one," his friend caught on to his advantage. "By the way, we're going to the club tonight. Want to come?" Timothy made his way to the bar and sat down on a high wooden stool. He signalled to the waiter, asking for a clear gin on the rocks. Without a drink, he couldn't tolerate this dinner. "I guess," Timothy replied uncertainly. He was still annoyed by the nightclub, where he'd gotten into a scuffle with an insolent waitress. There was something about her that irritated him too much, but he couldn't figure out what. He couldn't forget the girl's arrogant face with strobe lights running across it, and he seemed to be alone in his indignation. Gabe, one of the main characters in the play, forgot about the incident the very next morning. Maybe because of his easygoing nature, or maybe he really didn't care about the girl's behaviour. But Timothy couldn't stop his irritation, even at the mention of the unfortunate place. He knew the girl had been fired, but his soul would not rest. "Are you still freaking out about your birthday?" The best friend sensed Timothy's mood. "Forget it, bro. To be honest, I liked it." "Are you crazy?" Timothy snorted, grinning, and stirred the ice in his glass. "I didn't know your fetish was when somebody wipes their feet on you and punches you in the face." "Go to hell," replied the friend without rancour. "That waitress is just a girl with character. I love that kind of girl. It's a shame she got fired. I was drunk. She started blowing me off. She hurt my male pride. So I said all sorts of things to her." Timothy wrinkled his nose. "What kind of nonsense are you talking about, Gabe?" grumbled Timothy, feeling that his friend had betrayed him. "You forgot some girlish novel in your room, and you've picked up hearsay from there. Say it's true, or we'll go look for the reason for your softness at the therapist." "You're wicked, Timothy." Gabe waved away his friend's sarcasm languidly. "In general, we are waiting for you, if you survive your dinner." The guy dropped the call, putting the phone down on the bar countertop. He looked longingly at the remaining drinks in his glass, realizing that a couple more sips and he'd have to go back to his father and his guests. Suddenly, a woman's voice caught his attention and made him turn his head to the left. There was a waitress taking drinks from the bar, lining up cups, a small teapot and a French press on a tray. A smile never left her face. The girl was chirping and flirting with the bartender. Suddenly, Timothy recognized her and froze in shock, because it was the same waitress from the club. "Thank you," sang out the girl, having coped with the ordered drinks, and she left the bar. Timothy sat frozen like that, like a statue, staring at the girl's back while burning with curiosity. What's her name? Anna, I think. Well, Timothy grinned to himself. The evening doesn't promise to be boring anymore. Timothy's spirits perked up. What was it if not fate? The high powers were out for revenge. After all, the very Providence had brought them both to the walls of this place, and he had no intention of missing out. He paid for his unfinished drink and headed towards the main hall. There, he leaned against one of the columns, standing in its shadow like a predator. All the tables were occupied. Waiters, like industrious bees in black bearded uniforms, were scurrying from table to table. They took away dirty dishes, discreetly took used napkins from the table, put new dishes and drinks in front of the guests. Anna Maria was standing next to one of the tables, smiling at the guests, either listening to their wishes or swooning from compliments. From Timothy's place, it was impossible to hear what three guys and a young waitress were talking about. However, the girl blushed and at one point laughed merrily. "Look at her," Timothy remarked irritably. "Now she's not fighting." Noticing that the girl finally stopped chatting with the guys and walked briskly towards the small corridor for the staff, Timothy shadowed her. A plan had not yet matured in his mind. What exactly he would do when he caught her eye? Something made him think that even a simple reminder of himself would be enough. "Do you think you could run away and find a place in the sun?" "No, baby, there's no burrow where I can't get you. You humiliated me once, so reap the rewards for the rest of your life." But no sooner had he rounded the corner than he heard a child crying. Convulsive sobs filled with pain and resentment. And right after that, there was the waitress's voice, which now sounded incredibly soft and caring. "Come on, there's no need to cry," she begged the child. Timothy cautiously peered out into the corridor. It was darker there than in the main hall, but the guy saw the girl was kneeling in front of the boy. He looked to be about 5 or 6 years old. "It hurts," the boy reported, smearing tears and snot all over his face. Timothy noticed that the kid had a gash on his knee. He must have run away from his parents, who were eating at a restaurant, and fallen. Anna Maria quickly took out a fresh napkin from her pocket, carefully wiping the kid's face. "It'll go away soon. And you know what? Let me tell you a magic poem. It takes away pain and fear." "Is it sure it will help?" The child hesitated. "Well," said the waitress mysteriously, "it may not work right away, but if you're a brave boy and stop crying, it will work faster. Magic loves the brave." "I'll try," the boy promised, sobbing through a reddened nose. "And how do you know the magic verse?" The girl hesitated for a moment as if confused. Then a gentle smile lit up her face. "It was told to me by a brave and little knight. Even though he was just a boy, he always protected those who were in trouble. And this poem will surely help you." Then the girl leaned over and whispered something that made Timothy's blood freeze in his veins. She was telling him something, not just a poem. It was a familiar poem, a comforting poem that he, Timothy, had invented a long time ago, so long ago as if it were in a past life, covered with a layer of dust. And now this centuries-old dust was blown away, dispersing it around. And Timothy stopped breathing because the dust was getting into his lungs, stinging his eyes and making tears appear. Timothy couldn't believe his ears. It was the verse he had told his sister Anna Maria when they were hiding in the blanket house, or when she was afraid to fall asleep at night, or later when, once they were in the orphanage, they used it to take away their fear of the unknown. Timothy watched mesmerized as the waitress stood up and took the little boy's hand. He had stopped crying altogether. Only a red knee with an abrasion and slightly swollen eyes reminded him of the recent trouble. "Now let's go find your mum, okay?" she said. "She must be worried, right?" "She thinks I'm in the playroom," the boy sighed sadly, "and I ran away. She's going to scold me." "She won't. I'll explain everything to her." The waitress hastened to calm the anxiety of the little boy, and then she looked up. Their gazes with Timothy crossed. At first, recognition and consternation lit up in her eyes, but those emotions were instantly replaced by a frown of indignation. "I hope you're not following me," the girl said, blushing with indignation. "Otherwise I'll go to the proper place and seek an injunction against approaching me." The waitress swiftly rushed past the guy, dragging the boy in tow. Timothy, on the other hand, looked dumbfounded. He stared at her with his mouth ajar, as if he were facing a new wonder of the world that he had accidentally met in his life. Is he drunk or what? A squeamish thought flashed through the waitress's mind. Despite the outward bravado, Anna Maria did not like the unexpected meeting with the rich guy. What a misfortune to get a job at the very restaurant where this rascal is dining. She did not know what else to expect from him. Anna Maria clenched the child's hand harder in hers, leading the boy away. She knew where his family was sitting. A noisy company was celebrating someone's anniversary. Wait! Timothy dazedly called out to the girl, as if to come out of a trance. Wait! I have to ask you a question. Just wait! She felt his hand come down on her shoulder from behind. The girl immediately jerked forward, letting the guy's fingers scoop up nothing but air. Turning around sharply, she gave him an angry look. Don't you dare touch me, Anna Maria hissed. I'll call security. It's a decent place here. There's a camera. I'll tell them you've been harassing me. You misunderstood me. Have a nice day, muttered the girl, quickly winding her way into the main hall. Timothy, unable to stand it, rushed after her. At that moment, another waitress, the one who had served their table, was returning from the hall. Anna Maria, you don't waste time, do you? Already found yourself a boyfriend? She cheerfully threw, passing by the colleague and throwing a look at the boy who clung to Anna Maria's hand. Timothy froze in place. His eyes widened and his heart skipped a beat to start pumping blood with renewed vigour. The air was getting short. Anna Maria. She called her Anna Maria, he thought in shock. Meanwhile, Anna Maria smiled at the other waitress. Yes, you know, I was desperate to find a Prince Charming. I thought it would be easier to raise him myself. The second waitress laughed merrily, appreciating the joke. Her head was turned toward Anna Maria as she walked away. She didn't look ahead. Therefore, she didn't notice an obstacle in the form of a petrified Timothy and flew into him. The tray with dirty plates slammed into the guest's chest. One of the plates slipped, falling and breaking into small white shards. The rest of the dishes miraculously survived. Oh my goodness, the waitress exclaimed fearfully. I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Timothy, however, did not even hear her lamentations. He fell weightily to his knees, as if his legs could no longer hold his body weight. What's wrong with you? Are you feeling ill? Did I hit you? The waitress asked him incomprehensibly. Your jacket is a little dirty, let me wash it. The guy wasn't thinking about the greasy stain on his expensive jacket that someone's leftovers had left. He was thinking about the fact that he had banged his left knee, and it ached again, reminding him of his soccer injury. The pain throbbed in him like that little boy must have. And in his head, at that second, the waitress's voice rang out with that poem again. Timothy finally came to his senses, shaking off the obsession. He had finally found his sister after all these years. He had found her when he had given up hope long ago and dropped his hands. The guy brushed the waitress's hands away from him, jumping up from the floor. Sorry, he mumbled, not looking in the direction of the confused woman. He ran down the hall looking around. Where was she? He must explain everything to her. But suddenly another thought came to his mind. No, first he must make sure it was her, that this was no joke of evil fate and coincidence. Maybe his sister told their poem to this waitress, or maybe he didn't make this poem up himself, but heard it in the yard, memorized it to comfort his crying little sister. Son, Timothy's father called him. Where have you been? I called you and then I started looking for you. We were just leaving. Timothy looked back at his dad with some surprise. He had already forgotten that he had not come here alone, and he had some responsibilities to his invited guests. Go, Dad, I'll be right back, Timothy muttered, still looking around the tables. I need to find a girl. His gaze ran from one waitress to another. Where is she? Maybe on the second floor of the restaurant. Whatever it is, it can wait. Mr. Weston pronounced it with a dash of seriousness in his voice. You'll chase the girls some other time. It's critical for us to make an impression now, Timothy. A great contract is at stake. How about not to ruin it? You don't understand, Dad. The heir tried to explain himself. You're the one who doesn't understand. The father raised his voice, but then sighed, calming down. Listen, Timothy, let's postpone your super important search operation until next time. I don't ask you for anything that often. There was truth in that. Father and mother showered their son with all the blessings, never denying him anything, and never asking for anything in return. So, to turn his back on his family now was wrong at the very least. "Okay," Timothy exhaled in a shaky voice, still scanning the surrounding space with such tension in his gaze that his eyes began to hurt. "That's good." The father patted his son on the shoulder. "Let's go. Everyone's waiting for us." Timothy realized he was doing something wrong when he left to follow his father. But with that, he felt a prick of relief. He was still afraid to believe in possible happiness. But he could also not forget the look that the girl gave him in their last meeting. It was full of contempt, disgust, and even hatred. Of course, she had a reason for that reaction. Timothy was being a moral freak, intoxicated with power, stirred by the feeling that was stirring in the stranger's breast. He had allowed himself such low acts, for which he now berated himself. But it was useless to regret. What had been done could not be undone. How am I supposed to show up in front of her? "Look, Anna Maria, look what your brother's become. He is rich financially, but poor spiritually." The guy was ashamed. He spent the rest of the evening with his family, but his thoughts were far away, and when Gabe started calling him on the phone, trying to pull him to the nightclub, he ignored his friend. Later, lying in bed, he could not sleep a wink. Now he understood why the girl annoyed him so much. It wasn't irritation. It was painful memories of the past, like an organism's reaction to a trigger. Her hair was the same shade as his own, and her skin was as pale as if they'd both been created from the same piece of marble. Why hadn't he seen that before? And her big eyes were brown, like good whiskey, like strong tea. They were his little sister's eyes. He had so often wiped the tears from her cheeks, and now he was trying to make her cry himself. Memories began to creep into his mind along with the pre-dawn fog, sticky and cold. He remembered how he and Anna Maria had been brought to the orphanage, how they had held hands, afraid to uncross their fingers. They had been put in separate rooms then, and he had snuck into her room at night. In the morning, the teacher found them sleeping in the same bed, and then they were separated. He was taken to another orphanage, and Anna Maria, he didn't know what happened to her. The man who accompanied Timothy said his sister would be adopted soon. Maybe he lied to comfort him. Maybe he was telling the truth. Timothy didn't stay long in the orphanage as well. Fate had brought him together with the Mr. Weston and his wife. They visited the orphanage and brought some goodies and gifts for the little ones as charity on the same day when Timothy had just arrived there. The Westons had no children of their own, so they tried to give a piece of their care to those who needed it. The headmistress brought the Westons to her office, and the newcomer was led there as well. When the spouses saw the boy, something inside them trembled. They had previously discussed the idea of taking an orphan from the orphanage, but it did not go further than talk. And here Timothy was, pale, sad, and beautiful, like a porcelain doll. Mrs. Weston's heart shrank. Later, she said that it was maternal feelings that made her wake up when she saw the blue eyes of a dark-haired boy. Soon, Timothy was living in a luxurious mansion, which was located outside the city, surrounded by fruit trees and rose bushes. Later, he tried to look for his sister. Of course he was too young, but a plan matured in his mind. He decided that if he would be a good son for his parents, become obedient, sweet and loved, they would fulfill his precious wish, find his sister and take her to their house, especially since there were so many rooms. So, a year later, when his parents asked their son what he wanted for his birthday, he spoke for the first time about Anna Maria. "I'm ready to eat less," the boy seriously and fervently promised his foster parents. "And we can sleep in the same room. You know, she's minimal and thin, like a bird. She won't take up much space. And she has a very funny laugh. If you tickle her, she grunts like a piglet. You will definitely like her." The Westons were so touched by the child's words that they promised to help him. The spouses, indeed, turned to the appropriate authorities. Only the girl had already been adopted. So, if she already has a family, should they interfere in the child's life? But Timothy couldn't calm down. At the age of 16, he came to the Department of Guardianship and Custody. He was told nothing about Anna Maria's fate. Then, in an emotional outburst, he had a big fight with a woman from the guardianship service. He even broke something in her office. Lucky for him, she didn't call the police. "You had no right to separate us," shouted Timothy at the time. "This is inhuman and surely illegal." The woman then poured tea for the boy, sat him in an armchair and tried to explain why the children were being separated. "First, one child has a much better chance of finding a new family than two," she said to Timothy in a soft tone. "As practice shows, children who stay close to each other cannot adapt to a new life or accept a new family. They cling to each other, fixate on themselves. This does not end well. Recently, a woman took in a brother and sister. Their adaptation was very difficult. The children turned each other against the new mum. At the same time, when one child stayed at home and the second child went away, for example, to the hospital or camp, there was peace and quiet in the family. But when they met again, the problems began. Screaming, fights and tantrums. Do you know how it ended? They both went back to the orphanage. She couldn't handle it, and I can't blame her for that." Timothy listened to the woman, not knowing what to say. It seemed to him that none of this was about him and Anna Maria. They wouldn't fight in their new family, no. But the woman continued, "You're in a new family now, a beautiful one at that. Surely your sister has acquired parents too. Would you really be willing to ruin it all? If the two of you had stayed together, who knows if you would have gained families or stayed that way?" Timothy's chest tightened. During this time, he had genuinely grown to love his parents. They had given him the love and care he could never have dreamed of. Of course, he wouldn't want to lose them. Meanwhile, memories of his sister faded with time, seeming like something distant from a past life. They were coloured in grey tones, laced with piercing sadness. And then Timothy gave up. He decided for himself that Anna Maria too had found her place. A family where she was loved, where she had the dog or cat she had always dreamed of. Anna Maria loved animals and never passed by a yard kitten or puppy on the street. Timothy decided she was happy. And then a girl burst into his life. She was like a comet that drew the starry sky, attracting his attention. Everything else faded away. The next morning, Timothy went to the restaurant, torturing himself with thoughts and conjectures. He could no longer wait. His whole body vibrated, and his fingers shook when he went inside and asked the bartender to call the receptionist. Just yesterday, the fancy restaurant had been packed to the brim with guests. Now it was quiet on a Monday morning, with neutral music more suited to a masseur's room to relax clients. A red-headed waitress was watching the only guest in the place without much enthusiasm, an elderly man in an expensive suit. He was finishing his English breakfast, drinking with black tea. "Hello, may I help you?" Timothy was snapped out of his distracted thoughts by the administrator. "I'm looking for Anna Maria," said the young man, tapping his fingers nervously on the counter. "She only works weekends," the woman informed, eyeing the young and handsome man with interest. "On weekdays she studies." "Maybe you can give me her phone number?" Timothy tried a charming smile, but he feared that the smile came out more anxious than friendly. "I'm uncertain if I can," the woman said, averting her eyes. "We can't give out personal information about employees." "Where does she study, at least?" "I don't know," the blonde girl shrugged. "Anna Maria, the new girl?" The bartender suddenly joined the conversation, wiping a glass with a clean towel. "She's studying to be a veterinarian, except where I have no idea." Well, that was something. All that was left was to go around to all the veterinary schools in the city, Timothy thought sarcastically. However, he nodded to the bartender with gratitude and turned back to the blonde, making another attempt to play on her pity. It's important for me to meet her. Literally, it's a matter of life and death, insisted the guy, looking at the girl pleadingly. She bit her lip and averted her gaze, but Timothy felt a glimmer of hope that she was about to break under his onslaught. Let's do it this way. I'll call and tell her that you're looking for her, she suggested at last. She can come here if she's free, or she'll let me leave her phone number, or I'll just put you on the phone, okay? Okay, Timothy nodded, feeling excitement dry out his throat, and turned to the bartender. Can I get a glass of water? The administrator pulled out her cell phone and immediately dialed the right number. What should I say to her? She asked, raising her beautiful eyebrows. Who's looking for her? Tell her that her brother Timothy is looking for her, he replied, hesitating for a moment. The administrator's eyes rounded. She decided that she was dealing with an obsessive fan or, in the extreme case, one of the visitors. But she definitely wouldn't refuse to help if she knew he was a brother. But she had no time to voice her thoughts. At the other end there was, "Hello?" followed by a yawn. "Anna Maria. Hello. It's Nellie. Did I wake you up? I'm sorry. It's just that there's a young man in the restaurant right now and he's looking for you. He says he's your brother, Timothy." Huh? What? Yes, of course. The girl handed the receiver to Timothy, who had frozen in front of her. He still couldn't take a sip of water from the glass placed in front of him, and now the words were coursing down his throat like thorn branches. Yes, hello, Anna Maria, he said, feeling the improbability of what was happening, as if he were a movie character in a ridiculous set. There was silence on the other end. The guy even took the receiver away from his ear to see if the girl had dropped the call, but the seconds were ticking away. Timothy? Finally a woman's voice sounded, broken and unsure. Anna Maria, I'm at the restaurant, the guy began, still feeling the improbability of what was happening. I'm coming right now. You just wait. You wait, Timothy, I'll come, blurted out the girl, interrupting him. Timothy didn't have time to answer anything, as the conversation was interrupted. Instead of the girl's voice, there were short beeps. He returned the phone to the administrator, mumbling words of gratitude. She looked at the guy with even more interest than before. The girl returned to her workplace, but she kept glancing at the guy now and then. Timothy finally drained a glass of cool water. He didn't eat breakfast, but the thought of food caused not appetite, but unpleasant feelings of nausea. He probably couldn't even eat a bite in this situation. Seconds turned into minutes. They stretched like sweet bubble gum, stretching to infinity. Finally, Anna Maria appeared in the restaurant. Barely had their eyes met as the colour fell from her face. Anna Maria's brown eyes filled with tears. If this is a joke, she whispered as she looked at Timothy's face, it's too cruel even for you. Timothy took a deep breath, as if he intended to leap from the cliff into the icy and dark water of the ocean. Only then did he say resolutely, Anna Maria, I swear to you, it's me, Timothy. She shook her head as if the guy's words had turned into small bees with sharp stings. The girl hurried to chase them away before they touched her. Anna Maria. Timothy took a step towards the girl, holding out his hand. I'll tell you everything. She looked up into his face again, frowning her eyebrows tensely. Her eyes searched his face for familiar features. And they found them. Anna Maria, who had grown up amidst the cruelty of orphanage children, couldn't bring herself to reach out her hand in response. She still wasn't sure if it wasn't a coincidence, a cruel prank concocted by the rich kids. However, he had the same blue eyes and hair, and He had the tiny mole next to his eyebrow. It was the same as Timothy's. It almost blended in with his eyebrow. If you didn't look closely, you wouldn't notice it, but Anna Maria knew where to look. "It can't be," the girl whispered, putting her palms to her trembling lips. "Anna Maria," gently and pleadingly, the guy called out, and then suddenly whispered the familiar lines from the poem. It was too much for Anna Maria. The next second, with a desperate sob, she threw herself into her brother's arms. She squeezed herself in his strong arms, small and fragile, as if she had turned into a little girl of 3 years old again. The little girl whose older brother had tried to braid her pigtail ineptly. The little girl with whom they had shared one piece of bread in half. The girl sobbed on her brother's chest, and her shoulders shook with sobs. She expected him to laugh at such a naive fool, but there was no laughter. Instead she heard, "I've been looking for you for so long, Anna Maria. I swear, I've been looking for you. I'm sorry I could never find you, my little sister. But you found me in the end," she muttered, unable to utter more. "Fate itself brought us together," Timothy replied. "I apologize for being such a cruel moron to you." But Anna Maria was ready to forgive him everything as long as he stayed near. Later, they were sitting on a bench in the park near the restaurant because they both needed fresh air. They were silent for a long time. Then they started talking loudly and quickly, interrupting each other. They laughed, wiping away tears of happiness, then began to sob with relief. People passing by looked at them with suspicion and quickened their steps, taking their eyes away from the strange couple. But Timothy and Anna Maria didn't care what people thought of them. For them, the world around had been erased, and only their own faces remained. "My parents have been looking for you, Anna Maria, I swear," Timothy said, "but they were told you were already in a new family." The girl nodded sadly. "That's the way it was. I was taken into foster care almost as soon as I was transferred to a new orphanage. Later, they brought me back. That orphanage was gone, so they sent me to the new one. It was worse." "You mean you were returned?" Timothy frowned sternly, looking at his little sister, who had to endure the betrayal of adults so often. Anna Maria looked at the pigeons that began to gather around them. Out of habit, the birds were hoping that those sitting on the bench would have some bread or a handful of seeds to share. "It was a fairly mature and well-to-do family," she began to recall. "They didn't have children, but it didn't work out for them. Something with their health, probably. Later I realized that with my help, they just wanted to keep their marriage alive. If they had had a child together, their love would rise from the ruins. Everything was wonderful at first. I was just caught up in a fairy tale. They toyed with me like an expensive toy, competing for my favour. They gave me presents, dressed me up in an uncomfortable dress with ruffles and bows. I never said I didn't like the outfits, so as not to offend them. I almost choked once, I swear. They put a high-collar dress on me with 1,000,000 buttons in the back. It squeezed my throat so tight I turned blue." The girl jumped with laughter, remembering this fact of her biography. Timothy, on the other hand, grew more and more gloomy. His sister's words did not seem funny to him. They reeked of longing and resentment. "But every day the atmosphere in the family was getting worse and worse," Anna Maria continued after a short pause. "The foster parents were constantly quarrelling. They would yell at each other for long periods of time in the next room, simply forgetting that I existed. Sometimes they even forgot that I needed to eat. And then they got divorced. Neither of them wanted the responsibility of an adopted daughter alone. After much arguing, they gave me back." Timothy swallowed. He stared at his sister's profile, not understanding. How could she have been abandoned? How on earth could adults decide to care for a child and then throw her away like a defective item that wasn't useful? "Then I went to a new orphanage." The girl began to make invisible patterns on the wooden surface of the bench with her finger. When another family wanted to see me, I threw a tantrum. I was angry that they looked at me like a thing, like a dog that they wanted to take me into the family, but then they could throw me out on the street. So I stayed there until graduation. And then some arrogant jerk got in a fight with me at a nightclub. The girl raised her head and looked up into her brother's face. On her face, in the cut of accusatory words, shone a smile filled to the brim with happiness. Timothy did not know what to say to his sister. Instead of words, he hugged her skinny shoulders tightly again. "Everything will be different now, Anna Maria. I'll definitely take care of you," he promised the girl fervently. It had been 3 years since Timothy and Anna Maria had met. Timothy stood in the cafe watching Strictly as Gabe and Torquil hung a bright garland with the inscription, "Congratulations." "It's sagging," Timothy remarked. "You should raise it higher." "Oh, come on," Torquil exclaimed, looking at his picky friend. "She won't even notice your garland." "Why is that?" took offence at the party organiser. "Because I'll be here. I'm the most handsome man here. Anna Maria won't look anywhere else. Only at me." Torquil winked and earned several dissatisfied looks at once. First from Timothy, who jealously watched his sister's entourage. This was especially true of the suitors that were flocking around the Anna Maria. Secondly from Eunice, who had become the best friend for Anna Maria. And thirdly from Gabe. He had been dating Anna Maria for a year, but they hadn't told Timothy about their relationship yet. Gabe didn't like to keep such information from his best friend, but he liked the idea of receiving a blow from him even less. Young people did not immediately move to a new level of relationships. Although Gabe, from the very beginning, felt sympathy for the beautiful girl, he began their acquaintances with apologies. Timothy's parents welcomed Anna Maria into their family with such cordiality, as if they had once lost their own daughter. Mrs. Weston began to devote almost all her spare time to Anna Maria, surrounding her with maternal care, and the girl felt like a part of the family. As for Timothy, he had been truly happy recently. It was as if a missing puzzle piece had been inserted into his heart. And today he decided to arrange a surprise party for Anna Maria in honour of her graduation from the veterinarian school. Now Anna Maria could use her real gift to treat lame dogs and parrots with colds. Mr. Weston had already arranged for her to work at a great veterinary clinic. Timothy rented a small cosy cafe, called Close Friends, and used his comrades as free labour to give the place a festive atmosphere. Timothy's fiancée, Holly, stood guard, peering into the road to see if Anna Maria's figure was walking there. "She's coming!" shrieked the girl suddenly, running into the hall. Excitedly whispering, the young people left balloons and posters, throwing themselves in a scattering. Some hid under the table, while others hid behind the column. They left behind only an empty hall. Anna Maria arrived with her close friend Molly, who also graduated from the veterinary school. They froze at the entrance, looking around in amazement. The cafe was absolutely empty and quiet, as if even the staff had evaporated. "And where is everyone?" Molly asked aloud. A lonely yellow ball rolled past the girls like a tumbleweed across the desert. At the same instant, Anna Maria and Molly jumped, shrieking, as the walls of the cafe were filled with pops. Multicoloured confetti flew through the air, and with it came shouts. "Congratulations!" the friends yelled. "Surprise!" The young woman accepted congratulations from the friends, laughing and crying with joy. Anna Maria caught a glance at Timothy, realising perfectly well who had started it all. Brother and sister met eyes, and Anna Maria thanked him with a sincere smile. Sometimes she anxiously wondered if it would all be taken away from her again. But Timothy was doing everything to make those unpleasant thoughts leave her. Gabe, her secret boyfriend, jumped up to her, In front of everyone, he wrapped her in a hug and kissed her on the lips. Everyone hooted. "I thought today was a good chance to make us known," he whispered in the ear of an astonished Anna Maria. There were plenty of witnesses around. "Timothy definitely won't kill us." "Well, no," muttered Timothy, already addressing what had happened. "I can't believe it. Anna Maria? Of all the guys in the world, you chose that ridiculous jerk." He was answered by cheerful laughter, and Anna Maria felt her heart beating fast in her chest, which was bursting with excitement. She was finally home.
Lisa was sitting on the edge of the bathtub, clutching a pregnancy test in her trembling hand. "This can't be happening," muttered the girl, looking at the 2 stripes. They were bright and literally teased and asked with a sneer, "And what are you going to do now, Lisa? How are your Napoleonic plans for your life doing? Are they still on?" Lisa had no answer to these questions. She didn't understand how this had happened. No, she knew that children do not come from cabbage, but she couldn't understand why she had fallen into this nature's trap. One single night, one mistake she had made, shouldn't have led to such a fatal outcome. The girl covered her eyes and remembered the night she had spent with the director, or, at least, back then she thought he was the director. That day she had passed the first round of the beauty pageant selection process. A small victory had turned Lisa Donovan's head. She always dreamed of fame, popularity and recognition. God had given her beauty, so she dreamed of a career as a model or actress, wanting to appear on the covers of popular glossy publications. Even in childhood, looking at her mother, who worked as a saleswoman, Lisa decided that she would not repeat such a fate. The girl was disheartened by the grey life that surrounded her. The poor condition of their apartment, cheap clothes, unpleasant neighbourhood. Lisa hated all of this. She loved the life from TV shows and magazines. She was fascinated by the glamorous world of fashion. At the age of 5, she could already rummage through her mother's meagre makeup bag and walk down a makeshift runway with confidence. Who didn't walk in their mother's high heels as a child? Helena, Lisa's mother, used to say at such moments. Later the girl started ballet and realised that she wanted to become a ballerina. After all, they were like fairies from fairy tales. Helena supported her daughter. The single mother didn't have much money, but she tried to support her daughter's hobbies, except that Lisa had problems in her classes. "Your girl has a strong personality," the teacher, Mrs. Wilson, said to Helena. "There is talent, undoubtedly, but it's not enough to justify her behaviour. The other girls are constantly complaining about her. Not a single lesson goes by without a scandal. She starts fights, purposely trips her classmates if they do something better. Lisa doesn't take criticism well and gets angry if she doesn't like something. Today the girls were doing a simple dance step and Lisa couldn't do it, but she refused to listen to me and was rude. This is unacceptable." The last straw for the teacher was that Lisa pushed her daughter Michelle and called her names. Lisa and Michelle were the same age and attended the same dance class. Mrs. Wilson treated Michelle the same way as the other girls, sometimes even more strictly. However, Lisa believed that Michelle was being treated differently by the teacher. When Michelle was asked to demonstrate a glissade assemblée to the other students, she did it perfectly. For her age, she was incredibly talented, but Lisa was jealous of her success and felt she had to be first in everything. So she told Michelle that without her mother she was nothing, and then pushed her rudely, causing Michelle to twist her leg. That was the end of Lisa's ballet career. However, the girl continued to dream of popularity. She had no interest in her classmates, nor in her studies. Lisa only focused on her appearance, and fashion magazines became her Bible. At the age of 14, she started attending castings, but with no results. It turned out that appearance wasn't everything. To become an actor, talent was necessary.
Lisa gritted her teeth and decided to take a different path. She began to try herself in the fashion industry, and so, when she turned 18, her suffering paid off. Passing the first round was the first step towards winning a beauty contest, and this encouraged Lisa. After being selected, she was invited to a party with the other girls. The party took place on a luxurious yacht. Lisa, who had never been on a yacht before, was impressed. She couldn't stop smiling, and although she had never drunk alcohol before, she didn't refuse the drinks offered to her. The taste of sparkling wine made her feel light-headed. It was at this party that she met Richard, a director who was looking for a girl to play the lead role in his new series. "I work in France. I moved there to fulfill my dream of becoming a director," he explained to Lisa. "Why France?" the girl asked, surprised. "Do you know that Paris is the birthplace of cinematography? The Lumiere brothers, who are considered the fathers of cinema, organized the world's first movie show at the Paris Grand Café. They invented the cinematograph and made the first short films like The Arrival of the Train," Richard said enthusiastically. "But when it comes to the most beautiful girls, everyone knows they can only be found here. I've noticed you right away, Lisa. You may not have seen it, but I was sitting right behind the jury chairs. I think you're perfect for the lead role, and I can use my connections to put in a good word with the jury. You can count on winning." Richard reached out and gently touched Lisa's fingers, looking deeply into her eyes. Lisa's heart skipped a beat, and she didn't pull her hand away. "It's finally a chance for me," she thought. After an hour and a couple of glasses of champagne, the director from France invited her to discuss her bright future in the movies in his cabin. Richard led Lisa to a luxurious suite, taking another bottle of champagne and a bucket of ice. As she looked at the bucket, Lisa was reminded of a scene from the James Bond movie Goldfinger. In that scene, Agent 007 seduces a girl by pulling out a bottle of Dom Perignon from an ice bucket. At that moment, Lisa realized she hadn't come to the VIP cabin to discuss her future in movies. She had come here for the glamorous life. "May you close the door?" Richard asked, opening the bottle. Lisa knew she had to make a choice, and it was clear to her. She nodded and closed the cabin door behind her, locking it with a golden key. Later that night, Lisa woke up to the sound of angry screams. She struggled to open her eyes and saw a handsome man in a tuxedo yelling at Richard. Richard stood there in his underwear with his head down like a shamed schoolboy. The shock brought Lisa to her senses, and she quickly realized she was naked. Blushing, she covered herself with a blanket, trying to understand what was happening. The truth hit her like a bucket of cold water. In the world of show business, no one can be trusted. "You're fired!" the stranger shouted at Richard. "How could you bring such a kind of woman into my quarters?" "I'm sorry, it won't happen again," Richard pleaded. "Please don't fire me. I have a 6-month-old baby. What am I going to tell my wife?" "You didn't think of that before? You wretch! How can you bear it?" The man continued yelling. Lisa's lips trembled and tears filled her eyes. Not because it was her first time with a man. No, she was overwhelmed with resentment because Richard turned out not to be a director from beautiful France, but merely the chauffeur of the man who was really a European filmmaker and a member of the jury in a beauty pageant. "Clean this place up!" the director roared at Richard, who nodded like a puppet. "Get this cheap one out of my bed quickly, and then tell the staff to change the bedding." It took Lisa a moment to realize that she was the one being referred to as this cheap one. She blushed deeply and tried to hide her face behind her hair, fearing recognition and disqualification. Fortunately for her, that didn't happen. However, she didn't win the contest in the end either. The girl was too tense, and this made her stumble during the fashion show and stutter during the interview. Of course, she didn't tell anyone about her fatal mistake. She wouldn't bear the ridicule and the jokes from her friends. Time had passed, and Lisa had managed to put that embarrassing mistake out of her mind. But news about pregnancy shook her to the core, as Lisa was sitting in the bathroom, lost in her thoughts, when a knock on the door and her mother's harsh voice snapped her back to reality. "Lisa, are you going to stay in there for long?" Helena asked impatiently. "I came back from work an hour ago and need to wash up too." Lisa quickly crumpled the test strip and pocketed it, then washed her hands and splashed cold water on her face to calm herself. She glanced at her reflection in the mirror before heading out to meet her mother. "I'm tired, I just wanted to soak in the bath," Lisa said, without looking at her mother. "I'm not hungry. I'm going to sleep right now." She hurried to her room, locking the door behind her. In front of a large mirror, Lisa examined her reflection intently, her focus on her belly. But no matter how she turned or looked, she still saw a thin girl, and the sight of her own thinness somehow reassured her. "It must be a mistake," Lisa whispered to herself. "Some kind of glitch." It wasn't until her doctor's appointment that her worst fears were confirmed. "You're pregnant," the doctor remarked after a thorough examination. "The pregnancy is not in its early stages, but I can confirm the exact term after an ultrasound. When was your last period?" Lisa felt embarrassed. "I don't remember," she admitted. "I've been on a strict diet, trying not to gain weight, so my periods have been irregular." She brushed off the fact that she had forgotten about her menstrual cycle for the past 6 months. Lately, Lisa had noticed weight gain, and any change on the scale would anger her. Sometimes she would even stop eating and only drink water to stay slim. Her ideal was to be like Kate Moss at the beginning of her career. Lisa dreamt of achieving that look, so she tried every diet she could find. "And when was your last experience with a man?" the doctor asked, now with a more serious expression. Lisa bit her lip and exhaled. "It was more than 6 months ago." The doctor's hand, recording the patient's information in a book, froze. She looked up at Lisa. "Have you noticed any other signs of pregnancy? Morning sickness, breast enlargement or tenderness, fatigue, heartburn? These are common symptoms of a pregnancy." Lisa ran her hands through her hair in frustration. She shook her head, not because she denied the doctor's words, but because it was all part of her life, even without pregnancy. Lisa, who aspired to be a model, often faced gastrointestinal problems. Morning sickness and heartburn were nothing new or alarming to her. "Yes, I have issues with eating. I've thought that... Oh my God. What am I going to do now?" Lisa straightened abruptly, looking into the doctor's eyes. "I can't have a baby. I don't want to be a mother. Can we get rid of it? Can we do it now?" "I'm afraid the deadline has long passed," she said. "If what you say is true, your baby is already a human being, you know." The ultrasound confirmed the doctor's words. Lisa learned that there was a baby growing under her heart, a healthy baby girl. The doctor ran further tests and hurried to examine the expectant mother. "Everything is okay. You'll meet your baby soon," the doctor assured her with a kind smile. Except Lisa didn't even smile back. The pregnant girl looked at her picture that the doctor had handed her, but she still couldn't understand how it could be inside her. At home, Lisa sobbed as she confessed everything to her mother. "The doctors won't let me have an abortion," she cried. "I'll find another clinic, one that will agree." "Quiet! The neighbours will come running," her mother said, pale and crossing herself. "What am I saying? That's impossible already. Dear, don't worry. A child is not a bad thing. So what if there's no father? There are the two of us. We'll figure it out. I raised you. I'll take care of another child." "Actresses don't have babies, neither do models," she shouted at her mother hysterically. "I don't want a child. I want to be famous." When the emotions subsided, Lisa could finally come to terms. with the fact that she was going to be a mother. "That's the right thing to do," Helena told her. "You'll still be happy when you see your baby girl. Maternal love is the strongest, selfless love." However, her words were not prophetic. The girl, whom Lisa named Elle, was born 2 months later. Lisa did not feel any connection with her daughter, and as before, she was only interested in her own life and career. The child even irritated her. When Elle was 3 months old, Lisa managed to get a role in a play. This only increased her resentment towards the little girl. The child often cried and had trouble sleeping, which prevented Lisa from getting rest at night. "Mum, do something with her," she shouted angrily as the girl began to cry. "I'm trying to learn my lines. She's disturbing me." "She has a tummy ache, probably because you started feeding her formula instead of breast milk." Helena shook her head as she rocked the little girl in her arms. "You should have held her and shown her love. Maybe if she smells her mother's scent, she'll calm down. She misses you." Lisa simply snorted grudgingly. "What does she know? She's only a couple of months old. You said you would help, so sit with her." The play went well. Even though Lisa didn't have the lead role, she had an affair with the theatre director. This time the man was a real director, so the girl hoped for a starring role in his next production. Soon, Lisa went on tour with the troupe, leaving her 6-month-old daughter with her mother. Her career, as she had dreamed, was on the rise. However, she didn't tell anyone about her daughter waiting for her at home. She considered Elle her dirty secret. Lisa's schedule was demanding. She spent most of her time in the theatre. 6 days a week, the young artist had rehearsals, followed by performances. She was not at home from morning until midnight, and sometimes she did not return for several days. Later, she would tell her mother with a blissful smile, "After the premiere, we went to a party. It was such an unusual theatre party. Igor introduced me to some powerful people." "Igor? Is that your boyfriend? He's the director, right?" Helena asked, glancing at her daughter. "When are you going to introduce him to Elle?" Lisa furrowed her brow and quickly glanced at her little daughter. It was obvious that looking at the little girl displeased her. The child seemed alien to her, and Elle stopped reacting to her mother. Previously, she would smile, reaching for her mother's hands, but now a spoon given to her by her grandmother interested her more than her real mother. "It's not the right time," Lisa replied finally. "You know that men don't like women with kids." "It's not critical for decent men," Helena said to her granddaughter. Lisa blinked, but then she decided she didn't want to talk about the unpleasant topic anymore. She paced the kitchen, talking about the applause from the audience she had managed to capture, the praise from the director, and the envious glances from other artists. "They even wrote about me in the newspaper. I'm sure I'll get into the movie. You'll see me on TV soon, Mum." "That would be nice. At least somewhere your daughter will be able to see her mother often, even if it's only in a movie." Helena couldn't help but be sarcastic as she fed Elle porridge. And so their life went on. Elle grew up, and Helena tried to replace her mother. But the years were not the same, and it became increasingly difficult for the woman to keep up with the restless girl. As Elle grew older, Lisa began to treat her with more warmth. She liked that her daughter was gorgeous and resembled her. However, she still didn't want to give Elle much of her time. Lisa would return home after tours, concerts or social gatherings happy and radiant. In those moments, she wasn't angry at her daughter and would share a little bit of warmth. Elle cherished these moments, absorbing them like a sponge. If she could, she would take her mother's affection and hide it in her pockets, saving it for later, like delicious candy. One day, when Lisa returned to her childhood home after a long time, she found her little girl wearing a white gymnastics leotard and a tutu skirt. Lisa was astonished to see her old costume on the child, which had yellowed in some places. "Mummy, look what I can do now!" exclaimed the girl. Elle quickly sat in the splits and then stood on tiptoe, extending her leg. She was in a rush to show her mother everything she had learned. Elle longed to hear praise from the person who meant the most to her. She always looked at your old photo albums. When she saw your child pictures, she said you looked like an angel and asked to go to ballet school herself. Helena reluctantly shared. "Your old school is still open and it's not far away." "And why did you let her go? Remember how it ended for me? And by the way, you're just wasting your money. Ballet is expensive." "I spend money from my pension, and Elle is doing great. Michelle praises her, and she charges me half of the fee. She said that the rest will compensate for Elle's talent," replied Helena. "Michelle?" whispered Lisa in disdain. "Is that the daughter of my teacher, Mrs. Wilson?" "Yes," her mother nodded. "She inherited her mother's school and now she teaches the girls." However, Helena said nothing about the fact that the trauma Lisa had done to Michelle as a child had been extremely unfortunate. Michelle continued to study with her mother, but the path to a big stage was closed for her. So now she dedicated herself to teaching others. After all, her entire childhood and adolescence were spent in ballet halls. "No, it's still expensive. And tutus and point shoes." Lisa was indignant. "Do you know that ballerinas can spend up to 300 shoes a year? No, I'm against it. She won't become a ballerina, and it's too much money to spend just for a temporary hobby. If you have nowhere to spend the money, then give it to me. I just need a new dress." "I mend her socks and other clothes every week, but I can't even close the closet because of your outfits." The mother was angry at her neglectful daughter. "I want to be a star. I cannot appear in the same thing in public." Lisa splashed her hands. "You know what? I don't want to argue. Let me tell you how I had my premiere." Lisa sat down on the sofa, throwing her leg over her foot and spreading her silk skirt. It was blue and flowed like water. Elle was sitting on the floor at this time, looking at her mother. She could not understand why her teacher constantly praised her and called her a talented pearl, and her mother said nothing, although Elle tried very hard. Elle loved going to ballet school. After kindergarten on class days, she would grab her grandmother's hand and hurry running to class with her, so as not to be late and be the first to arrive, because for Elle, being the first and starting the circle was important. The girl thought that her mother, who always talked only about the stage and applause, would pay attention to her if she became a ballerina. However, Lisa continued to think only of herself. Time passed, but nothing changed. Elle, being a naive child, saw Lisa as a beautiful princess from the fairy tales Grandma read. She admired her mother because she was so beautiful, smelled of perfume, came with flowers, and always brought her presents, and also promises. Many, many promises. "When you grow up, I will definitely take you on tour with me. I'll show you how my life goes behind the scenes and on stage," Lisa cooed, hugging her daughter. "Maybe you'll want to become a model or an actress like me. You're so beautiful, Elle. You know, you're turning 6 this year. I'll come to the party. We'll spend your birthday together." "Really?" Elle clapped her hands and then hugged her mum tightly around the neck. "May I invite my girlfriends? No one at daycare believes I have a mum. I say you're pretty and play different princesses on the stage, but they call me a liar. They say I only have a granny." "Of course, invite me," Lisa smiled broadly. "I'll throw such a party that you'll be the envy of everyone. We'll buy a huge pink cake and new matching dresses." "May we have a yellow cake?" Elle asked. "I don't like the colour pink." "Even a rainbow cake. You can choose any colour," promised her mother. Helena only snorted. Your daughter has unfulfilled promises like a sweet tooth has candy wrappers," she said with anger. "Lisa, Elle believes you. You missed all her previous birthdays. I mean, she waits for you every time, and then she gets a present in the mail and tries to hold back the tears. The last time, she didn't go to bed all night, didn't blow out the candles on the cake, didn't let me unbraid her hair or take off her dress. She was expecting you to come to her party. You didn't even call. Do you even know what your child's wish is? She doesn't want another doll or a stuffed elephant. She wants to spend the day with her mum." "It'll be different this time." Lisa pressed her lips together resentfully. "I'll be there." It is not known how long all this would have gone on, had it not been for an accident that was to change Lisa's life completely. It was Elle's 6th birthday. She woke up in the early morning. The girl, feeling a pleasant excitement and anticipating the holiday, jumped from the bed and hurried to her grandmother's room. "Grandma, Grandma," chirped the birthday girl. "Wake up, wake up! Mummy is coming today." "Will there be balloons? When's Mummy coming? She promised me a yellow cake. Will there be 2 floors, like in the cartoon?" But Grandma did not react to her grandmother's words, no matter how much she tried to stir her up. Elle didn't know that Grandmother had fallen asleep forever. During the night, Helena had had a cardiac arrest. Little Elle cried, begged her grandmother to wake up, swore that she was making such a bad joke. But all in vain. Hour after hour passed, but her granny did not get up. For Elle, the time seemed like an eternity. She took her grandmother's push-button phone, but it was disconnected. The girl tried to go out, but she couldn't find the key. Elle was completely confused, her heart fluttering in her chest. She did not realize the tragedy of the situation, but she knew that something must be done. "Mummy will come soon," the girl remembered, and having calmed down a little, even became cheerful. "Mummy will come, and Grandma will get up too. We just have to wait for Mummy." At the same time, Lisa was many kilometers away from her hometown. The woman was in the dressing room, with the sound of applause still ringing in her ears after the just-past performance. She played her best and favourite role of Roxanne in the play Cyrano de Bergerac. She had a blissful smile on her lips. Lisa looked at her reflection in the mirror, illuminated by light bulbs. There was a knock at the door. "Come in." She threw us a note of haughtiness. "Who's there?" "Lisa," she heard a pleasant voice behind her. "My name is Pierre Trelliard. We haven't met, but I'd like to fix that. I've seen you on stage. I'm ready to write my name in the ranks of fans of your talent." Lisa looked over her shoulder and froze, not from the fact that the man was handsome or holding a luxurious bouquet of roses. No, it was just that she recognized him. The stranger who had been the only witness to her shame, the owner from the yacht. Yet, from the Frenchman's face, he didn't recognize her. Of course, for now, she was no longer a thin and dishevelled bird, but a plump bird with a shining plumage. Lisa had involuntarily been following his life. She knew he made great movies, and appearing in one meant a golden ticket into the world of show business and popularity. He was known for not conducting standard casting for the main characters in his movies. As a temperamental and eccentric director, he personally discovered talents and stars for his films. And now he's found Lisa. Quickly remembering her own artistic identity, Lisa composed herself. She straightened her shoulders, smiled dazzlingly, and slightly lowered her eyelashes, as if displaying a sense of humility. "Oh, I know you. You're the director, right?" She rose from her seat and gracefully approached the guest. "I admire your movies. It's an honour for me to receive kind words from the maestro of the film world." She accepted the flowers and inhaled their fragrance. A blush appeared on her cheeks. "Thank you. These are my favourite flowers," she lied, stealing a glance at Pierre from beneath her lashes. "I won't delay the purpose of my visit. I have a proposition for you. I think you'll like it." The director smiled. "Are you sure?" She flirtatiously smiled at the man. "What is it? A hand and heart proposal, perhaps? Then I'll need a few minutes to consider. I'm a lady." The man laughed, appreciating both the flirtation and the joke. "I want you to change the stage to a movie set. I believe you deserve more than that, Lisa," he said. "Would you like to discuss the details privately? If you're available, of course." Lisa's breath caught. She had planned to meet Igor after the performance, but now she realized clearly that the theatre director no longer interested her. She had already squeezed everything from him, and now she was open for the next journey. "With great pleasure," she said, and smiled, promising. Pierre offered her a chance to go to Europe and star in his project. Lisa's head spun with the prospects that lay before her, and she completely forgot about her child waiting for her somewhere far away. After spending 2 days in Pierre's apartment and in his bed, Lisa received a call from an unknown number. She frowned and said, "Hello?" into the receiver. "Is this Lisa Donovan?" the unfamiliar woman said. "Yes, who is this?" Lisa asked, holding the phone with her shoulder and grabbing her scarlet lipstick to touch up her lips. "Please, speak quickly, I'm busy." She had plans to have dinner with her new lover. "You have a call from the regional hospital," the stranger began, "about your mother and daughter." "What's wrong with them? Is someone sick?" Lisa asked indifferently, smoothing her lipstick. "Please sit down, if possible," the woman requested. "Just speak already." Lisa couldn't bear the suspense any longer. The woman on the other end of the phone hesitated. Lisa glanced at her watch, growing increasingly impatient and annoyed. Finally, the stranger spoke. "Your mother passed away 2 days ago. She had a heart attack. My condolences," she said. "Your daughter was in the apartment with her grandmother the whole time and couldn't leave. Eventually, she tried to call for help through the window. There was a mosquito net in place. The child leaned on it. The net broke and the girl fell." "What? What happened to her?" Lisa sat down on the edge of the bed, her legs giving way. The lipstick slipped from her weakened fingers, hitting the stick against the white carpet, leaving a stain resembling a smear of blood. "She's alive and her condition is now stable. It's actually a miracle. The child fell from the 3rd floor onto a bush, which broke her fall. However, the girl has some health issues. You'll need to come over." Lisa informed Pierre only about her mother's passing. She hadn't accepted his offer to go with her because she still kept the child hidden from her new suitor. When Lisa returned to her hometown, the grim and grey, unsightly reality she had been running from for so long enveloped her like a dense woolen blanket eaten away by moths. It stifled her breath and filled her lungs with dust. The mother's funeral, bad health conditions of the daughter, all this knocked the ground out from under the feet of the actress, who only yesterday met a new love affair, revelled in male attention and passion, and dreamed of a trip to Europe. Lisa arrived at the hospital after her mother's funeral. She was hesitant to see her daughter, as if she already knew what to expect. The doctors delivered devastating news. Elle had suffered a severe spinal injury, the extent of which made it impossible to provide a prognosis. Elle's doctor took Lisa into his office and shared the grim reality. "Elle has a 50-50 chance. Her recovery will be a long and arduous journey. It will be difficult and painful, especially considering her young age. She may regain the ability to walk. However, it will require a miracle, exhaustive work and constant care for the child." These words felt like a death sentence to Lisa. As she approached her daughter's ward, her anxiety intensified. She hesitated to enter and face her daughter's condition. Lisa stood at the door, trying to compose herself, and clutched a toy giraffe she had brought for Elle. Suddenly she overheard a conversation among the nurses inside the room. "Oh, it's such a pity about the girl. They say she used to attend ballet school," one nurse remarked. "She's so beautiful, like a doll. But now she'll be confined to a wheelchair for the rest of her life. She won't even be able to go to the restroom on her own. Poor thing. She rarely sleeps and waits for her mum." The other nurse expressed her concern and sadness, asking, "Is it really that bad? Don't doctors say that miracles can happen?" But the first nurse responded with a touch of cynicism. "Have you personally witnessed any miracles? Let me tell you, I've seen numerous people with similar injuries in my life. It will be miraculous if she can even hold a spoon on her own. She's already considered disabled." Lisa turned pale and trembled like a fragile leaf in the wind. She vividly imagined her future with Elle, realizing she had no one else to rely on. She envisioned herself giving up her glamorous attire for drab home clothes, just like her mother had worn. She would have to cook and feed Elle, who would now require assistance even for the simplest tasks. The thought disgusted and saddened her. Lisa wanted to escape from this harsh reality, but she did not notice that the conversation had ended and one of the nurses came out of the corner and literally bumped into Lisa. "Ouch!" gasped the woman in surprise, but her expression quickly brightened. "Hello, you must be Lisa, Elle's mother. We have been eagerly awaiting your arrival. Elle will be thrilled to see you when she wakes up. She's been asking all the time if her mummy's coming. She's currently asleep, but you can wait in the ward." Lisa nodded, feeling confused. Her legs felt heavy, as if made of lead. She entered the ward and froze, gazing at her daughter. The pale girl lay in the bed, appearing peaceful. Lisa even thought she would suddenly jump up and run to her, moving with a spring-like bounce in her step. However, as she observed everything more closely, she noticed the catheters and a wheelchair prepared for the future. "Why has this happened to me?" the woman whispered in horror. Finally facing the harsh reality, she collapsed into a chair, letting the giraffe fall to the floor. Lisa covered her face with her hands, suppressing her tears. She realized that she felt no pity for her daughter. Instead, she felt pity for herself and her future that this child seemed determined to ruin from the very beginning. "You sneaked into my life," Lisa recalled, wiping away the mascara-streaked tears from her face. "You destroy everything in your path." Lisa had dreams of achieving greatness and yearned for glory. She was young and beautiful, but what awaited her now? Elle was like a burden, a weight dragging her down. No, she couldn't allow that. "I'll give birth to a new child and forget about Elle," Lisa thought. "Yes, that's right. I'll have a healthy boy or girl by Pierre, and then he'll be mine forever." Suddenly the silence in the hospital ward was shattered by the ringing of a telephone. The loud and upbeat pop song, as the ringtone, seemed improper in this sterile environment. Lisa grumbled and reached into her bag to silence the phone. She glanced quickly at Elle's face, afraid that any noise would wake her. The girl frowned, her pale lips trembling, but she remained in the realm of dreams. "Hi, Pierre," the woman whispered, taking the call. She stood up and stepped back to the window, staring out at the courtyard where the patients were walking. "Lisa, are you all right? When will you be free, my lovely star?" the man cooed. He had called Lisa his lovely star, which would soon light up in the sky. He believed in it, and he believed in Lisa. He whispered it to her for the first time, crumpling the silk sheets and capturing her moans with his lips. The nickname, spoken in the language of love, and memories of his arms, made Lisa's heart squeeze slightly. She closed her eyes, allowing these emotions to wash over her. The woman realized it was too early to speak of true feelings, but she had never experienced such emotions with Igor or anyone else. Pierre stirred her blood, made her heart beat furiously. She was falling in love with him. "It's okay, I just still can't get over it. You know, it's a tragedy. I've never had anyone but my mum," Lisa muttered. "Lisa, I understand everything, but you have to pull yourself together. It hurts to lose loved ones, but you can't bring your mum back. The stage cannot wait. You must seize the opportunity when it presents itself." Rubbing her tense forehead, she shook her head. "I understand, but—" Lisa cast a glance over her shoulder at her sleeping daughter. "No buts, Lisa. I called to say I'm leaving for France today. We're starting filming, and I'm waiting for my star," said Pierre. "It's up to you to get on this train, but know that the next one may never come." "You're calling me to France?" the woman gasped. "Exactly. I'm waiting for my lead actress," said Pierre. Lisa stood frozen in place. She had dreamed of being in the capital of France even before that fateful night on the yacht. She longed to be in the city on the banks of the Seine, a city considered the fashion capital of the world and the birthplace of cinema. I'll come," Lisa exhaled and then whispered passionately. "I beg you, give me a little more time to sort out some formalities, and then I will come and belong only to you and the stage." The answers and promises of the future actress satisfied the Frenchman. "A week, no more," Pierre said and ended the call. Lisa was looking pensively out the window, and suddenly a timid voice sounded. "Mummy?" Lisa flinched, the phone almost slipping out of her hands. She looked up at her daughter with a startled expression. Tears welled up in the little girl's bright green eyes. "Mummy, is it really you? Have you come?" she cried. Elle was looking at Lisa, afraid to blink in case the vision disappeared. Seeing her daughter's helplessness, Lisa felt weak, but she managed to force a smile. "Yes, honey, I'm here. How are you?" "I'm fine, Mummy," the girl replied quickly, looking at her mum with anticipation. However, she didn't understand why she was frozen and looking so strange, why she wasn't hugging her. "Are you mad, Mummy?" the little girl finally realized. "I won't do it again. I have been waiting for you to come to my birthday party. I have been waiting for a long, long time, but Grandma never woke up. She always asked me not to go to the window, and I haven't listened for that day. But I won't do it again. I'll be a good girl." Lisa's throat felt like a vice. She clenched her teeth, afraid that a sob would escape. At this moment, as she looked into the little girl's trusting face, Lisa couldn't quite grasp her own feelings. She just turned 6. I missed her birthday again. If only I had been there, Lisa thought, but quickly pushed away the painful thoughts. "No," Lisa resolved within herself. "I will start anew. It's for the best that she's without me too. I can't live with a disabled child. I could become famous, but not burdened with her. Having a handicapped child is a mark of shame, a disgrace. Pierre would stop loving me if he knew about Elle." "Mummy, I love you so much," Elle suddenly exclaimed. Lisa looked into her daughter's eyes and responded dryly. "I love you too, Elle. You'll get better, I'm sure of it. Rest now. I'll call the nurse. I need to talk to your doctor." Saying this, Lisa stood up and hurried out of the ward. An hour later, the whole hospital staff was in shock. Someone had overheard Lisa speaking to the doctor, expressing her intention to give up Elle and leave her in the hospital under the state's care. It took a long time to resolve matters with the doctor and receive guidance on how to transfer the child to a nursery home for the children with disabilities. When Lisa left the doctor, it was dusk outside. She quietly made her way towards her daughter's ward, but upon reaching the door, Lisa changed her mind about entering. Instead, she decided to leave without saying goodbye. She was about to go away when suddenly the door opened. "Mum!" the girl called out to the ward. "Mummy, are you leaving?" Lisa abruptly turned around, her gaze fixed on her daughter. That realistic nurse who had been talking about the impossibility of a miracle for Elle this afternoon was standing near the door. When Lisa saw her face, she realized that she opened the door intentionally. "Hey, you must have forgotten to say goodbye," she said in an arrogant and almost menacing tone, splashing her hands. "A child is not a dress you can discard if a button comes off. Do you know how she has been waiting for you? She needs support and care now more than ever." But instead of stirring her conscience, these words had the opposite effect on Lisa. Her face turned a deep shade of purple as she trembled with anger. "It's none of your business. If you enjoy cleaning up after sick people and wiping drool, that's your choice. This is not the life I chose," she shouted with a piercing voice that reverberated down the hallway. The nurse recoiled from the enraged mother. Tears streamed down Elle's cheeks once again. "Mummy, why are you leaving? Are you really leaving forever?" she whispered, searching Lisa's face for answers. Lisa turned away, nodding. However, she did it so non-obviously and weakly that it was hard to see the affirmative nod, but Elle noticed it. A tiny heart was beating in a child's chest, but it held more love than there was water in the ocean and the stars in the sky. At that moment, Elle finally realized that her feelings were unrequited. She had suspected it before, but she hadn't allowed herself to believe it. The truth was deafening and painful. It made her dizzy and her chest ache, and she desperately wanted to cry. "This is all happening because I have been a bad girl," she thought, feeling sudden fright. "Mummy, I'm sorry. Mummy, please don't go away. I'll be good. Just forgive me." Lisa's lips trembled. She gripped the handle of her bag tighter, shook her head, and took a step toward the exit. "No, Mummy!" cried the girl, summoning the last of her strength and choking on her tears, tried to move, just to be close to her mother. "Mummy, don't leave me!" cried the child with her last strength. "Oh my God, my darling, wailed the nurse, leaping to the girl. Tears were streaming down the cheeks of the woman, who could not be surprised by anything. Lisa was horrified by the unfolding scene. She took hurried steps back, one after another. Then she turned and ran away, and the clatter of her heels was heard in the ward for a long time. "Mummy, Mummy," whispered the exhausted and destroyed Elle. "I'll be cured. I'll be healthy, I promise. Mummy, please don't leave me again. Mummy!" This cry will haunt Lisa for a long time. She'll wake up in the best hotels, on luxurious sheets and in ordinary actors' trailers, as well as in the arms of her favourite Pierre, but always in a cold sweat, shivering with tears on her cheeks. She'll be dreaming of that scene of her daughter helplessly lying on the hospital bed and begging not to leave her. And she'll always be afraid that someday her terrible secret will be revealed to the world, and then her gorgeous life will turn to ashes, and those around her will turn their backs on her. Many years will pass, and Lisa's biggest nightmare will come true. Fate will present the woman with a bill for a large sum, because everything has to be paid. Michelle Wilson walked down the hospital corridor, feeling strange. On her feet were soft shoes, something resembling the usual point shoes, only without the hard toe box. The woman didn't like hospitals. She remembered when her mother, who had been a role model, had fallen ill abruptly. From a stately lady, important and proud, she had quickly turned into a dry and ill woman. Michelle had spent a lot of time at her hospital bedside. Proud Mrs. Wilson did not want to meet her end in her bed at home. She did not want to burden her loved ones, showing them her weakness and demanding care. However, Michelle visited her at the hospice every day until the very last day. Perhaps that was why now she had a feeling of anxiety, sadness, and a kind of hopelessness in her soul. Even worse was the fact that she had come to visit not some elderly woman, but a little girl, her brilliant student. She was only 6 years old, but Elle seemed older than her years. The girl was attentive, focused and determined. Michelle remembered how she begged her grandmother to wait for her a little longer, trying to perfect simple movements. Michelle thought that Elle was not at all like her mother. Yes, she remembered Lisa. Many years had passed, but it was difficult to forget the person who had ruined your life out of anger. At first, Michelle didn't even want to take Elle into her school, thinking that personal animosity would hinder her from teaching the girl well. But Elle won her over. A little girl with hair as dark as tar, pale skin, and emerald eyes sneaked into the heart of her teacher. Michelle knew that most of her students were the children of rich parents. They didn't care about their daughter's talent or success. They just wanted to take pictures of their little girls in beautiful swan costumes during the recital and show off in front of their rich friends. But Elle, she was unique. The girl seemed to understand the whole essence of ballet dancing. It wasn't just technique. The best parts should be performed with soul, and Elle knew this. When Michelle found out what had happened to her, she was in such shock that she cancelled her classes. Her hands were numb, and all she could think about was Elle. Elle was never late for class, and when she didn't show up at all, Michelle started to worry. She even called Helena, but no one answered the phone. The news reached her a week later and shocked her. Now, the teacher, gathering her strength, came to visit Elle at the hospital. She hoped to cheer her up. In her hands were flowers and a bag with a gift. She had bought her best student a new ballet outfit and pink satin point shoes. Michelle understood that she couldn't give them to a girl who was in a wheelchair, but for some reason she took the gift with her anyway. As she approached the room, a young nurse came out. "Oh, are you here to see Elle?" she asked. "You know, I should warn you, she's stopped talking altogether." "After the accident?" the teacher asked sadly. "No." The nurse shook her head dejectedly. "She stopped answering questions after her mother's visit." Michelle frowned. "What's happened?" she asked with sudden anger, even surprising herself, as if she already knew the answer. The nurse looked around fearfully, afraid that someone might overhear. However, the girl was not opposed to gossip, so she spoke up. "She refused to keep Elle. She said she didn't want a disabled child and didn't want anything to do with her. She asked us to take her to an orphanage. She didn't even want to know where her daughter would be sent." Colour drained from Michelle's face. For a moment, she even struggled to breathe, as if she had stumbled and fallen after an unfortunate pirouette. The nurse continued to speak, but Michelle was no longer listening. "I'll go see Elle," she interrupted the girl hoarsely. "You brought flowers for the child?" The young nurse was surprised to see the luxurious bouquet. "She's not just a child. Elle is my student. It's customary to bring flowers to ballet dancers," Michelle replied. "I'm afraid the path to the stage is closed for her." The nurse shook her head and stepped aside, allowing the teacher to pass. The room was quiet, but Elle was awake. She was lying on the bed, her head turned towards the window. Her gaze was devoid of emotion. A plush giraffe lay beside her. "Hello, my little pearl," Michelle smiled softly. The girl perked up and turned towards her. Her face twitched, as if she wanted to respond, but changed her mind. "I'm sorry it took me so long to come," she said as she took the bouquet and put it in a vase. "Do you like the flowers? I chose all the yellow ones they had at the florist. That's your favourite colour, isn't it?" "I think it turned out lovely." Elle looked at the flowers in silence, a bright spot of sunshine in her dreary room. She had once confided in her teacher that she dreamt of receiving a bouquet after a performance. Michelle looked at the child, feeling her heart break once again. It was as if all the strength and emotion had been drained out of Elle. She sat down next to her and began sharing funny incidents from her school and ballet life. Can you imagine? Recently Holly declared she would never dance in the Nutcracker because there's a Mouse King there. She's afraid of mice. Are you afraid of mice? Michelle tried to joke, hoping to see Elle's lips twitch again. Soon the child gave the teacher a smile that made Michelle relax a little. She gently touched the girl's dark hair. "There you are, smiling. You look so beautiful in these moments," she said, gently stroking Elle's head, and then asked, "Do you know why I called you Pearl?" The girl shook her head, looking curiously at the teacher. "You know, in ballet, there are certain steps called pas de bourrée. My mum used to call them pearl beads. She used to say that real ballerinas do that move like stringing pearls on a thread. The first time you did them, it was incredible, as if you had always done them that way. I was amazed, and I couldn't help but think of you as a pearl." Michelle shared her innermost thoughts. Elle listened with her mouth agape, mesmerized by such high praise. Michelle leaned closer to the girl and looked into her eyes. "Now, I'm sure I wasn't wrong. Do you know that pearls are the queens of all gems? The chance to find a pearl in the sea is great luck. I think you are the real pearl. You've got talent, honey, so no matter what happens, you must not give up. Do you understand me?" The girl nodded, but then her lips quivered, and then she said quietly, softly, "I can't dance any more." Michelle never made promises unless she was certain she could fulfill them. However, this time, the words burst from her lips before she had a chance to consider them. "You will! The important thing is to believe. I'll stay with you, my pearl. I will help you." Michelle took a box of birthday presents out of the bag and showed its contents to the little girl. "You will wear these point shoes, my girl. I swear I will do everything I can for it." Tears appeared in Elle's eyes, which today were as dark as forest moss. Michelle hugged her tightly around the shoulders, making sure the girl wouldn't see that she herself was crying. At that moment, Elle wished she could hug her teacher too. Instead, she covered her eyes, resting her face against Michelle's neck. Her salty tears poured down on the silk handkerchief, one of the ones the teacher always wore around her neck. The little girl was afraid to trust an adult again. However, she longed to be loved by someone. At that moment, when Michelle embraced Elle, their new life began. Michelle never had a personal life. She only had brief affairs with men who admired her beauty and grace, but couldn't capture the heart of the ballerina and stay by her side for long. First, Michelle had her studies. Then her mother fell ill. Their family business, a ballet school, fell onto Michelle's fragile shoulders. The young woman had to prove to students and parents that she was just as good as her mother. Therefore, thoughts of having a family and a child rarely crossed her mind. Yet sometimes she yearned to give up everything and become a mother, especially when she saw happy women who brought their little girls to her school and kissed them goodbye. However, Michelle firmly believed that a career and children were incompatible. She remembered her mother's words, said with great seriousness, when she allowed her to go to school dances. "No boys, Michelle. They only have one thing on their mind, to get under your skirt. For a future ballerina, that is unacceptable," her mother admonished her. "Remember, you can either be a prima ballerina or a mother. You must choose what you want, to devote your life to dance or to family." "But you have me," the girl protested, "yet you are a ballerina." Her mother grinned, saying, "That's why I don't dance on stage, but teach others, because I have you." Of course, later they realized that Michelle would never have the leading roles. Her right leg, which had been injured in childhood by Lisa, often reminded her of that fact. And now, after a long time, Michelle appeared to have a daughter. Yes, Michelle adopted Elle, afraid to even imagine what would happen if the child were put up in a special home for kids with disabilities. She spent a long time collecting documents and consulting lawyers. When Elle was discharged from the hospital, she went to Michelle's house instead of an orphanage. Michelle's life became much more difficult. She hired a nurse for Elle, took her to rehabilitation courses, and often accompanied her to school. At the end of the day, Michelle was exhausted. However, the woman, considering that seeing her little girl try was worth all the sleepless nights. Doctors praised Elle, sincerely amazed by her progress. They called her a real miracle. Michelle remained silent, but realized that it wasn't only a miracle, but also the child's willpower. The girl had more character and strength than many adults. In the summer, Elle attended a camp for active rehabilitation. When she returned, she was enthusiastic. After interacting with other children facing similar challenges, it seemed like life was starting to get better. Despite this, her friends criticized Michelle. "You're crazy, Michelle. How long will you be playing the role of Mother Teresa? Just send her to a boarding school," Megan exclaimed, dropping by for a cup of tea a few months later. "What do you mean, send her to a boarding school? Do you think it works the same way as returning something to a store? You can't just return a child like a carton of expired milk," Michelle retorted, getting angry with her friend for such unkind words. Megan rolled her eyes toward the ceiling and took a sip of green tea. "Why don't you want a normal family? And now what? A disabled child is a lifelong responsibility." "The doctor said her trauma is treatable and she's making progress. I was told she wouldn't be able to hold a spoon, and now Elle is getting on her wheelchair by herself and taking care of herself too," Michelle said with enthusiasm. "Elle is a strong girl, a real fighter. She can handle it, and I'll help her. You'll see. We'll invite you to her performance." "God willing, of course, but I still think what you've done was impulsive. Yes, I feel sorry for her too, but I also feel sorry for other people in trouble. But that doesn't mean I should take them all home. It's a burden, Michelle. You need to build a personal life, not ruin it." Such cruel words were not to the liking of Michelle, but she had no time for answering them. The woman did not notice how the girl in her wheelchair appeared in the doorway. "You know, I already know how to do many things. The doctor praises me," the little girl said, looking into the face of the adult guest with a non-childish look. Megan blushed with shame and could not find an answer. She quickly said goodbye to her friend and her foster daughter and flew out the door. After seeing her off, Elle looked at Michelle and asked bluntly, "Am I a burden? Somehow my mother called me the same thing. She told Granny I was a burden." Michelle crouched down in front of the girl, taking her hands in her own. "Don't listen to others, my pearl," she said, looking fondly into the child's eyes. "You know, there will always be evil people around you, no matter who you are. If you can't walk, they'll act like Megan, calling you a burden. If you're the best, they'll make up gossip to smear you out of envy. The one behind you is always trying to push you from behind, to make you fall. The main thing is not to be like such people and keep moving forward, okay?" The girl licked her lips and looked at Michelle excitedly. Then she removed the plaid that concealed her legs. "I have something to show you," she whispered. Michelle noticed that the girl's eyes glistened, and a tear appeared on her forehead, showing her anxiety. A convulsive exhalation escaped from Elle's lips, and then she strained all her strength, and "Oh my goodness," gasped Michelle, and at first she even thought that she imagined it, but no, Elle's foot moved and stretched at the toe, as if the girl was about to perform a choreographic movement. Elle was glowing with happiness and asked, "Did you see?" Michelle nodded, pressing her palm to her lips. Then she hugged the girl tightly. "You're a big, smart girl. It's only been a short time, but you've made such progress. I'm proud of you, my little pearl." Of course, they didn't plan to stop at what had been accomplished. However, not everything was going smoothly. One night, when Michelle left her bedroom to get a drink of water, she heard soft music playing in her foster daughter's room, a violin. She immediately recognized the part of Odette from Swan Lake. The woman tiptoed to Elle's room, but saw only how she, trying to get into the right pose, collapsed on the floor. Michelle wanted to run up to her, hug and comfort her, but did not dare to give herself away. Meanwhile, Elle hit the floor with her fist in anger. She clenched her teeth, crying softly. Her tears, in shiny beads, came off her cheeks and crashed to the floor. And then the girl tried to stand up again. Michelle's heart clenched tighter and tighter. She was constantly looking for ways to help her daughter. That's how she found out about a great physical rehabilitation instructor, massage therapist Sean Norton. The man, if rumours are to be believed, was almost a magician who helped desperate people to walk again. Not really hoping for his help, Michelle wrote a letter. She told him about Elle's fate and the girl's hopes, not just to walk, but to make the ballet jumps she dreamed of, especially the one when the ballerina seems to freeze in midair. "Someday," Michelle wrote at the end of the letter, "Elle will surely become Odette, Giselle, or perform a fouette in Don Quixote, but she needs help." From the moment Michelle dropped the letter in the mailbox, a week passed, then a second, past a third. But Dr. Norton had not replied. Michelle had already lost hope when a guest arrived at her school. She didn't immediately recognize him because she had imagined Sean Norton to be an older man, similar to Gandalf from the Lord of the Rings movie they had recently watched with Elle. However, he turned out to be a blonde man in his 30s, with brown eyes and a sly squint. "I've been abroad, and now I've come to see future Odette," he declared confidently from the threshold. Michelle had doubts about entrusting her daughter's health to a man who looked more like a model than a doctor. "Excuse me, but aren't you too young?" Michelle asked skeptically, not convinced that Sean Norton was the right person for the job. The man grinned, unaffected by Michelle's doubt. "I'm sure, Michelle, that you've been told the same thing, but I also imagined a ballet teacher differently," he said, curiously looking at the woman. His remark hit home for Michelle. She had to constantly prove to people that age and a youthful appearance were not indicators of experience and knowledge. Eventually, she confided in Sean after a long conversation. Michelle agreed to the treatment, but she attended them too. Together with Sean, they developed a whole system to help Elle stand on her feet. Sean's fame was justified. He found a way to reach the child's heart affectionately. He could make her laugh easily. They worked tirelessly, day and night, and finally, the day of triumph arrived. Elle took her first steps again. They were deprived of the grace of ballerinas, but they suddenly seemed to Michelle the most beautiful steps in the world. She reached out her arms, embracing Elle. The girl tightly hugged her foster mother and whispered, overwhelmed with emotions, "Thank you, Mummy." Michelle froze for a moment, unable to believe her ears. She looked up at Sean, who stood frozen beside her. He nodded, confirming that he had also heard it. Michelle held the child even tighter, kissing her on top of her head. At that moment, she was once again convinced that she had made the right choice. Elle was her daughter, and she would never let her go. In Europe, Lisa Donovan was known as Lisa White, a name she found more fitting for her new life. She changed her name as soon as she cut ties with her past. She was sure that after meeting Pierre, a streak of good luck would come her way. At first it seemed like it did. Lisa got a role, but success did not follow. Critics disliked Lisa's performance, called it empty and artificial. They claimed that Lisa had ruined a great movie. However, Pierre hurried to reassure his mistress. "Honey, even bad publicity is still publicity," he argued, taking away the newspaper with another scathing article. "It was your debut. The theatre is very different from the movie industry, although many people don't think so. You have to accept criticism and improve. But Lisa never learned to take advice. She was furious and had no intention of giving up, especially since she had broken off her relationship with Igor through a high-profile scandal, and the path to Homeland and the theatre was closed for her from now on. Yes, there were other theatre directors, but everything in this field was too interconnected. Lisa began to make her way in the world of cinema. Pierre had no idea that his beautiful and seemingly flawless Lisa was actually a wolf in sheep's clothing. She framed other actors to get roles or simply to punish them for spreading malicious gossip about her. She acted subtly, rarely getting her hands dirty. However, people began to notice that something was not right. Once, during a casting for a melodrama, one of the applicants for the main role was poisoned. Some girls were suspecting the newcomer schemer, claiming that she had kindly brought the victim a cup of coffee. Of course, they couldn't prove anything, but Lisa's reputation suffered, and no amount of effort could clean it, not even with such oxygen bleach as Pierre Tréliard. Lisa's career, which had never fully blossomed, began to fade. She then decided to latch on to Pierre like a snake, extracting strength, money, and connections from him. The Frenchman succumbed to her charm and became blinded by her beauty, and Lisa finally realized that her main role in life was to portray the best version of herself. As a result, she transformed into the glamorous beauty, letting go dreams of Oscars away. Sometimes she was invited to model, and occasionally Pierre granted her a role in a movie upon her pleas. He also used his connections to arrange TV show appearances for her. Lisa started doing charity work to improve her reputation. Overall, she managed to establish herself in this world, although she knew perfectly well that she was nobody without Pierre. Soon the French director announced their engagement. Articles about their affair and future wedding appeared in numerous glossy magazines, and then Pierre and Lisa got married. It was 5 years after they met. 2 more years later, while embracing his wife in their marital bed, Pierre asked her a question from her nightmares. "Would you like to have a child, darling?" Lisa's breath caught. She averted her gaze as if embarrassed, though she was simply hiding her tears from her spouse. "I don't even know. I can't imagine being a mother," she muttered. Pierre touched her chin with his fingers and looked lovingly into her eyes. "I'm sure you'll make a lovely, loving mother. You are made for love, Lisa." To respond to her husband's words, Lisa kissed her husband passionately, and then she purred in Pierre's ear, biting his lobe. "I don't know if I want a child, but it's always nice to try." 2 years had passed since that night, 2 years filled with attempts to conceive. However, Lisa was unable to get pregnant. Every month when she noticed her period, she would get angry and wonder, how could it be? I once conceived a child immediately after losing my virginity to some jerk, but now, no matter how hard I try, I can't conceive. Of course, Pierre also thought about the reasons and decided to accompany Lisa to the doctor, but his wife suddenly became hysterical. "I don't want to," she cried out, blushing deeply. "No, I hate doctors. Maybe I'll go later by myself." Pierre was surprised by her strong reaction, but he reasoned that the topic of infertility was very sensitive. He trusted his wife in everything, so he didn't argue. Little did he know how afraid Lisa was that the truth would come out. To her surprise, it turned out that Pierre valued family relationships greatly. What would he say if he found out I had already given birth, that I abandoned a disabled child? He calls me an angel, heavenly, a creature of purity and goodness. I guess this is all punishment for my sins. Payback, thought Lisa, sometimes looking in the mirror at her beautiful reflection. Another 4 years passed, and the subject of children became taboo in Lisa and Pierre's family. If Pierre mentioned anyone's children or his nephews, Lisa could get angry and break something. Their relationship showed cracks, but Lisa would quickly come to her senses and wrap her arms around the director's neck, apologize, and beg for forgiveness. Pierre used to give in. One day the man returned to their luxurious mansion in a great mood. He handed his wife an envelope containing theatre tickets. "Swan Lake?" Lisa marvelled. "Yes, a famous ballet troupe is coming here. They say it's the most beautiful ballet troupe in the world. I thought you'd like it," Pierre said, hugging his wife. "You mentioned taking ballet lessons as a child." "Did I really say that?" The woman wrinkled her nose. "I don't have fond memories of it." "If you don't want to go, we don't have to," said the man, and a little upset retreated to the home bar and poured himself a whiskey. "Truly, it's a unique premiere. The cream of society and journalists will be there. A young prima has been invited to the Royal Ballet in London. They say she's so talented that the entire audience starts sobbing when she appears on stage." Yes? Lisa, having heard that the local high society would be attending, was no longer listening about the ballerina. "You know what? Let's go. But I need a new dress and shoes. I want to shine." On the day of the premiere, Lisa was sitting in one of the best seats, feeling extremely pleased and proud. Before the ballet began, she whispered to her husband, "How did you manage to get such tickets? Even that upstart from the news programme, Christian, is sitting in the back." "Oh, I didn't tell you. They were given to me. They came with a note saying, 'Thank you for my art, especially the movie you, Lisa, had the main role.' It said that the movie helped someone to find their way in life. True, the letter was not signed." Lisa was surprised, but didn't have time to answer. The hall was plunged into darkness, and then the performance began. The audience couldn't take their eyes off the prima ballerina, who performed 2 roles at once, Odetta and Adelia. The performer skillfully conveyed the contrasting emotions and feelings of the heroines, and, at the end, many people were moved to tears. Tears flowed down Lisa's cheeks too, but not because of the performance. She realized why she was sitting in such a good seat. She saw her face. Even if it was makeup, even after many years, the mother recognized her abandoned daughter, who resembled her in her youth like a twin. "No, it can't be. I'm imagining things," she thought, refusing to believe her own eyes. When the performance was over, the hall burst into applause. The applause was so enthusiastic that Lisa felt a knot in her stomach. She had never received such applause. What she had thought was a flurry of applause in the past turned out to be just a light breeze compared to the storm that had erupted in the hall. Pierre stood up and headed towards the stage. Startled, Lisa clutched at his elbow and asked, "Where are you going?" "I want to give her flowers," he replied. "She's beautiful." Lisa watched as her husband made his way to the stage and presented a bouquet of snow-white roses to the prima ballerina. The young woman smiled at him, and then she looked up and locked eyes with Lisa. The last traces of Lisa's doubt vanished, and she felt sick and suffocated. Her luxurious manteau felt constricting, and the string of pearls around her neck felt like a noose. She hastily left the hall and took a breath of fresh air, trying to regain her composure. That's where Pierre found her, with a smile on his face and shining eyes, completely unaware of his wife's pallor. "You won't believe it. Elle invited us to dinner. She's the one who sent me the tickets. Oh, she's splendid. Maybe I can get her in the movie." Lisa listened to Pierre's words coldly. She felt genuinely frightened. What is she up to? She wondered, alarmed by the former actress's intentions. Lisa couldn't refuse dinner with the ballerina. In fact, she was more afraid to let her husband go alone than to meet her own daughter. They met at the restaurant. Elle was running late, and Pierre was agitated. His behaviour infuriated Lisa, and she felt a pang of jealousy. When Elle finally appeared at the restaurant, Lisa was completely taken aback. The girl was walking towards them in an indigo-coloured dress, her dark, thick hair swept up, revealing a young and pure face. Lisa realized that her daughter had dressed the same way she had on the day of her engagement to Pierre. The difference was that Elle was incredibly beautiful and young. Lisa clenched her napkin and gritted her teeth as she looked at her daughter. Throughout the evening she sat silent, afraid to say a word. She waited for Elle to expose her true identity to Pierre, but it never happened. Pierre remained oblivious to his wife's state. Lisa, looking inwardly at him, shuddered. Now he had that adoring look again that he had before, but now it was directed at Elle. And then Pierre laughed at one of Elle's jokes and said, "You're a miracle, dear." Lisa froze. Pierre seemed to realize his fault himself as he became embarrassed. "Gosh, forgive my frivolity, Elle," the director said, puzzled. "To be honest, you bear an uncanny resemblance to my wife. Don't you think, Lisa?" Reluctantly, the woman looked into her daughter's face, and Elle stared back at her expectantly, playing with her water glass. "It's like your mother and daughter." Pierre suddenly made another statement. Lisa trembled as if she had been slapped. Elle, on the other hand, smiled. "My mother?" The girl shook her head. "Alas, Pierre, I don't have one. More precisely, of course, she exists. It's just not enough to give birth to a child to be a mother." "Really?" marvelled Pierre. "I've heard certain rumours about you, but I couldn't even guess that they had a grain of truth." Elle sighed sadly, letting her glass down on the table with a graceful movement. "Alas, sometimes life takes pirouettes that you wouldn't see in a movie. The rumours don't lie. My mother, my own mother, abandoned me in the hospital when she found out I was disabled." "Maybe she had her reasons?" Pierre asked. "There are difficult situations." "There are no decent reasons to abandon a child. I thought mums always loved children," Elle said fervently, then took a breath and added more calmly, "You know, I was lucky to meet good people. My teacher became a real mum to me. She showed me what a mother's love is. Love against all odds. Later I had a father, although he was my rehabilitation therapist first." Elle smiled broadly. "It was a funny story. They constantly fought, always arguing about me, though they secretly liked each other. When I made my first decent ballet movement, they hugged for joy and Dad kissed Mum. I fell over in amazement. They were terribly embarrassed, but even more terrified. They ran up to me, but I started laughing until I was in tears. After that incident, they came to terms with their feelings. A year later, they got married. That's how Sean became a father to me." "Wonderful people," Pierre said thoughtfully. "However, you are an even greater miracle. Elle, to go through such hardships without a mother, without the ability to walk. Not everyone can do that." "Oh, I've had good examples before my eyes," Elle decided to joke. "Batman, Harry Potter, Spider-Man, for example. They lost their parents too, but nothing. They became superheroes. True, I decided not to save the world, but I still wore tight tights." Pierre laughed gleefully, not embarrassed by the audience of the elite restaurant. The Frenchman's eyes were burning. He was enraptured by the young and strong ballerina. "You know, Pierre, maybe one day you'd like to make a movie about my life. I'd love to play the lead." Elle offered suddenly, and then she smiled slyly and looked at Lisa. My mother, the one who had abandoned me, could be played by Lisa, for example. "And how would the movie have ended?" Lisa suddenly asked in a voice greyed with stress. "Revenge?" "Maybe. The main thing is that the offender should know what he is being punished for. I think revenge can only be sweet when you look the abuser in the face." There was silence at the table, then Elle got up from her seat. "Excuse me, I want to visit the restroom." Without a word to her husband, Lisa ran after her. Bursting into the ladies' room, she clutched at her daughter's arm with such force that the ballerina could barely keep from crying out. "What do you want?" exclaimed Lisa, shaking her whole body. "Tell me what you want from me." Elle subdued her with a scornful look. "You think I want something from you? A mother's love and care, maybe?" she snorted. "Although Pierre is a wonderful man, isn't he? Do you think you and I have the same taste?" Lisa recoiled, seeing the change in her daughter. She was no longer the naive beauty Odetta, but the intimidating black swan Adelia. She was frightening. Elle grinned. "Say, Lisa, did you watch the performance carefully? Did you see how Adelia, in the guise of a black swan, seduces the prince by pretending to be his lover? Did you see him confess his love to another? It hurts, really. I know everything about pain." Lisa licked her parched lips. Her gaze was full of fear and madness. "I beg you, leave him to me. I beg of you. I will do anything you ask. Just don't tell him anything, and don't take him away from me. He is my everything." The woman, who had always aspired to glamour and luxury, fell to her knees in the restroom. She grasped the blue hem of her daughter's dress, looking down at her. Elle's face showed no emotion. "You gave up so soon," she said dejectedly. "It even hurt. You didn't even fight like that for me." Then Elle pulled back the fabric of the dress, and Lisa fell to the floor sobbing. The ballerina walked over to the mirror, fixing her makeup. "You didn't even apologize." "I'm sorry," Lisa immediately cried out. "Please, I'm sorry." The daughter sighed. "Calm down. I don't need him. I don't need you either. I just want you to live and remember that you're only happy because of my grace. Because I'm better than you in every way, Lisa, even as a person. But thanks to that, my grandmother and true parents, who helped me become kinder than I would have wanted myself to be," Elle stated, and walked away. Lisa stayed on the cold floor, shaking. She realized that her daughter had told the truth, and now she would live her life constantly looking back like hell. For the expectation of a blow is worse than the blow itself. Elle left the restaurant without saying goodbye. She breathed at night air, feeling relieved. Yes, sometimes she thought of revenge, of meeting her mother, but when she saw her on her knees, she did not feel triumph. She felt nothing, except a pang of disappointment. The woman, what had seemed perfect to her as a child, now only evoked pity as she cowered before her on the floor. Elle looked up into the dark sky and thought that she wanted to see her mum and dad sooner, and her little brother Alex too. She missed her real family. "It's time to go home," smiled the ballerina, and walked away, finally leaving her past behind her.